Chapter 643. The place of extreme earth, which took tens of thousands of years to form, was right beneath Han Shua's feet. The enormous body of the primordious dragon was buried deep in the place of extreme earth. At the center of the boundary was an enormous hexagram magical matrix. At the center of the hexagram was a crack in the earth. Han Shua dove into the crack at lightning speed. 100 meters deep, he immediately saw the primordious dragon entrenched in the place of extreme earth. The enormous yuan energy of earth in the place of extreme earth converged into the primordious dragon's body from all directions, filling his body with a faint, earthy yellow halo. Inside the primordious dragon's head was a source of energy that absorbed the yuan energy of earth. The thick yuan energy of earth within it was very obvious. The primordious dragon knew of Han Shua's arrival the moment Han Shua tore open the water boundary. However, in order to better absorb the rich yuan energy of earth in the place of extreme earth, the primordious dragon had entered a dormant state. In order to awaken from this state, he needed some time. Although he tried his best to awaken from his dormant state, it still took him a few seconds. In those few seconds, Han Shua had arrived in front of him. Without hesitation or a word of nonsense, as soon as Han Shua saw the primordious dragon, he launched a torrential barrage of attacks at the primordious dragon that had yet to fully awaken. Han Shua's avatar of death suddenly split from his main body. The three trump card boundaries of weakness, fear, and aging were successfully formed in the blink of an eye and enveloped the primordious dragon's enormous body. Using divine energy, the element of death to form Death Reset bloomed beneath the primordious dragon's body like a beautiful flower. Death Reset was an attack that Han Shua mastered through the divine soul of that mid-god after he truly entered the divine realm. Under the effect of Death Reset, the opponent's body would rapidly decay and the element of death would rapidly occupy the enemy's body, causing rapid destruction to the body. Death's shift was like a beautiful man-eating flower. After it bloomed beneath the primordious dragon, the evil energy instantly poured into the primordious dragon's body. In an instant, the primordious dragon's body that came into contact with the power of Death's withering emitted thick green smoke and a pungent stench. Wielding the demon's lair edge that his avatar had transformed into, Han Shua's main body slashed down at the primordious dragon's head. The demon's lair edge emitted a ferocious howl of vile spirits and dazzling blood-red light. The demon's lair edge unleashed a power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. The ruthless and evil power was mixed with the negative energy of 10,000 souls and had a strong deterrent effect on the soul. Even the primordious dragon's powerful will was affected by this attack and was almost unable to muster any strength to counterattack. Roar, under the effects of the three great boundaries of the necromancy element and the corrosive power of death and wither, the primordious dragon was in so much pain that it couldn't help but let out a shrill cry. Under the effects of the three boundaries, the primordious dragon, who was already gravely injured, had both the strength of his body and soul greatly weakened. On top of that, the death fade was continuously rotting his body that had yet to recover. At this moment, the primordious dragon was struck by all kinds of pain. Even the primordious dragon was somewhat unable to endure it. After letting out a howl of pain, the primordious dragon's head swayed back and forth. His divine soul suddenly exerted force. A strange object that converged the yuan energy of earth began to frantically absorb the yuan energy of earth from the place of extreme earth. The energy gathered on his head, causing his head to look as though it had suddenly crystallized. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions as the sword slashed down. It was as though the sword had struck the hardest iron and stone in the world. It did not leave a single crack. Roar! The primordious dragon once again howled in rage. His head buzzed from the strike. He was dizzy and had a splitting headache. Han Shua's expression changed, and he was greatly alarmed when his sword failed to sever the primordious dragon's head. He suddenly realized that the primordious dragon must have long since obtained the Earth Soul Orb of the Earth attribute in the place of extreme Earth. His soul and the Earth Soul Orb must have fused together. The strange object in his soul that was absorbing the yuan energy of Earth must be the Earth Soul Orb. Using the Earth Soul Orb, the Primordius Dragon's physical defense would reach its peak in the place of extreme Earth. It would definitely not be an easy task to destroy the Primordius Dragon's body with a physical attack. This thought rapidly flashed through Han Shua's mind. He immediately gave up on the idea of using the sharpness of the Demon's Lair edge to directly shatter the Primordius Dragon's body. The Demon's Lair edge suddenly became motionless in the void. The evil and negative energy formed from the devouring of tens of thousands of living beings within the Demon's Lair edge abruptly condensed into an enormous, malevolent ghost face. Dripping with blood, the ghost face bared its fangs and brandished its claws. It pounced at the Primordius Dragon's soul in its incorporeal form. His avatar of death also gave up on using the energy of death to attack Han Shua's body. Instead, he concentrated all his energy and used the soul ren that Han Shua had yet to master to entangle the Primordius Dragon's soul slam. Similar to Death's Wither, Soul Rend was a divine grade attack that Han Shua had only recently mastered. Soul Rend could be viewed as a sublimated version of Soul Tremor. It used divine energy to gather one's own soul energy, entangle the opponent's soul, and grind and sever the opponent's soul bit by bit. Han Shua's main body did not remain idle either. He gave up on all physical attacks and instead locked his consciousness on the Primordius Dragon's soul. A vortex was formed in the depths of his soul, generating an extremely violent suction force that made every movement of the Primordius Dragon's soul extremely difficult. Inside the place of extreme Earth, the Primordius Dragon, who was already a mid-stage low god, could borrow the energy of the place of extreme Earth to form an extremely monstrous physical defense. If the Primordius Dragon were to face a low god of other elements who did not know how to attack the soul, he would undoubtedly be able to firmly defend his body and even defeat a god of a slightly higher level than him. However, all three of Han Shua's bodies knew how to attack the soul. Even his avatar of destruction, which should not be able to attack the soul, could directly attack the soul because it was formed from the Demon's Lair edge. Due to the negative energy from the deaths of tens of thousands of living beings, the avatar of destruction could attack the soul directly. The three bodies simultaneously gave up on attacking Han Shua's physical body and joined forces to attack the Primordius Dragon's soul. The Primordius Dragon's wishful thinking immediately fell through, and he fell into a bitter struggle. Han Shua was determined to end the Primordius Dragon right there and then. He unreservedly unleashed all the energy of his soul. The vortex formed by his main body's consciousness entangled the Primordius Dragon's soul, making it difficult for him to move. The negative energy formed by the Demon's Lair edge shrouded his soul, making it impossible for him to escape. Meanwhile, Han Shua's avatar of Death's Soul Shredder seized the opportunity to tear and mince his soul. Under the joint attack of the three bodies, the Primordius Dragon, whose soul had already been seriously injured by the Soul Piercers, finally couldn't withstand the attack. No matter how strong his physical defenses were, they couldn't protect his soul. Under the combined attack of the souls of Han Shua's three bodies, the ancient planar protector of Profound Continent finally lost the energy of his soul bit by bit. Han Shua dared not let his guard down. He firmly entangled the Primordius Dragon's soul and increased the intensity of his soul attacks to the maximum. Gradually, the Primordius Dragon's divine soul grew weaker and weaker. His aura also grew weaker and weaker. Sensing that the Primordius Dragon's divine soul was slowly losing consciousness, Han Shua's consciousness tightened. His marvelous consciousness attacked the consciousness that the Primordius Dragon had been condensing with all its might, bombarding the remnant consciousness into pieces. Han Shua's avatar of death took advantage of this opportunity to summon Earth Elite Zombie. After issuing a command, Earth Elite Zombie charged towards the Primordius Dragon's head like a madman. It burrowed into the Primordius Dragon's gaping maw and rapidly entered the Primordius Dragon's head. The divine soul imprint inside the Primordius Dragon's head gradually dissipated. The Earth Soul Pearl, the ultimate treasure of Earth energy, had become an ownerless object. As the darling of the Earth, Earth Elite Zombie naturally became the new master of the Earth Soul Pearl. Although the consciousness of the Primordius Dragon's divine soul had dissipated, under Han Shua's control, it did not completely vanish. The divine soul that had yet to dissipate contained the comprehension of the elemental energy of Earth that the primordial dragon had painstakingly cultivated for tens of thousands of years. This was the best opportunity that Han Shuo had painstakingly fought for Earth Elite Zombie. Naturally, Earth Elite Zombie would not stand on ceremony. Like a ferocious beast that had been starved for 1,000 years, he greedily occupied the divine soul that had no consciousness. Using the energy of the Earth Soul Pearl, he recklessly absorbed the enormous amount of divine energy of Earth from the primordial dragon's body. Seeing that the outcome had been decided, the overjoyed Han Shuo did not relax. His avatar of death and his consciousness firmly locked onto the primordial dragon's soul, fearing that the slightest carelessness could lead to unpredictable consequences. This process lasted for an indeterminate amount of time. It was not until Han Shuo was certain that the primordial dragon's consciousness had been completely erased and that Earth Elite Zombie had taken over the primordial dragon's divine soul that Han Shuo finally heaved a sigh of relief. The three bodies abruptly withdrew their attacks on the souls and started searching for the location of the interplanar transportation matrix. Without the protection of the Earth Soul Pearl and the support of divine energy, the primordial dragon had truly become a body of flesh and blood. It no longer possessed any freakish physical defenses. Han Shuo only observed for a short while before discovering the existence of the interplanar transportation matrix beneath the primordial dragon's enormous body. The primordial dragon's enormous body must have covered the interplanar transportation matrix with his body. If it wasn't for the fact that his consciousness had dissipated and he had lost all of his energy, even if Han Shuo knew the location of the interplanar transportation matrix, he wouldn't be able to destroy it. This was an enormous interplanar transportation matrix similar to the one in the Cemetery of Death. As it was not deployed by the same person, this interplanar transportation matrix was somewhat different from the one in the Cemetery of Death. Han Shuo did not care about that. After forcibly pushing the primordial dragon's body away, he raised the demon's lair edge and unleashed his divine energy to bombard the interplanar transportation matrix with all his might. Under Han Shuo's repeated bombardment, the interplanar transportation matrix was finally reduced to dust. There was no way it could be restored. Haha, let's see how you're going to get over here. I've won this battle. Han Shuo threw his head back and laughed heartily. Chapter 644. That's not necessarily true. You're a step too late. We arrived 2 days ago. I went out to look for you, but I couldn't find you. I didn't expect to find you here. Hee, little friend. Do you still remember my voice? A discordant, ice-cold voice suddenly sounded while Han Shuo was laughing heartily. The voice came so abruptly that Han Shuo didn't sense it at all. When the voice sounded, Han Shuo couldn't even sense its location. Han Shuo was greatly alarmed. Han Shuo had heard that voice before back at the Shrine of Ice. Not long ago, when Han Shuo massacred the Shrine of Ice, thousands of believers of the Shrine of Ice made a mid-god from an alien material plane descend upon Snow Celestial Tiana's body with their pious faith. In the snowy region, Han Shuo fought a difficult battle against that expert who couldn't even display 1/10 of his strength. He even injured that expert's divine soul. The ice-cold voice that sounded now belonged to that mid-god of water whose divine soul had descended upon Tiana's body. Not bad. You were actually able to break this barrier. However, now that I've added divine power to it, let's see how you're going to escape now. Catching a turtle in a jar should be referring to this scene. The voice laughed coldly and was filled with disdain. Although Han Shuo had always been confident in himself, he understood that he didn't even have a 10% chance of winning against this mid-god whose divine body and divine soul had descended upon him. At the instant that voice sounded, his two avatars instantly returned to Han Shuo's body. Without the slightest hesitation, Han Shuo hastily transmitted a message to Earth Elite Zombie, ordering him to immediately come out from the primordial dragon's head. Father, there's still a little bit of energy left to absorb. Earth Elite Zombie grumbled unwillingly. He had absolutely no idea how terrifying the enemy he was facing this time was. If you don't come out, both of us will die here. Han Shuo knew that this was not the time to hesitate and hastily transmitted. Earth Elite Zombie was also shocked to hear Han Shua's words. Without asking any questions, he gave up on absorbing the remaining bit of divine energy from the Primordius Dragon's body and hastily rushed out of the Primordius Dragon's bloody mouth. Han Shua's consciousness locked onto Earth Elite Zombie. He discovered that Earth Elite Zombie had taken possession of the Primordius Dragon's unconscious divine soul and the Earth Soul Pearl. He knew that Earth Elite Zombie had absorbed at least 80% of the Primordius Dragon's tens of thousands of years of cultivation. The moment Earth Elite Zombie rushed out of the Primordius Dragon's bloody mouth, Han Shua successfully cast necromancy magic. A ray of light flashed and disappeared with Earth Elite Zombie. As soon as the Earth Elite Zombie entered the netherworld, Han Shua immediately sensed an exceedingly terrifying energy within the boundary. The space seemed to be frozen by cold air, and the pressure was so great that Han Shua felt suffocated. It was at this moment that Han Shua immediately realized that the person had been outside the boundary the entire time when he spoke. It was only at this moment that he had truly entered the boundary. The person who came was a mid-god. He had imbued the boundary with divine energy beforehand. Han Shua reckoned that even the Demon's Lair Edge would find it difficult to break the boundary. Han Shua's mind rapidly raced for a countermeasure. We fought last time in that snowy region. You were very arrogant at that time. Today, my main purpose in crossing over to this world is to slowly dismember you to death. I hope you won't disappoint me. The voice was neither hurried nor slow. He had already imbued the boundary with divine energy. He was confident that with Han Shua's current realm, there was no way he could break the boundary. Therefore, he planned to toy with Han Shua to death bit by bit. At this moment where he could face death at any moment, Han Shua remained calm and did not show any signs of panic. His mind rapidly turned, and he resolutely came to a decision. Before that mid-god could approach, terrifying bloody light suddenly burst out from Han Shua's body. Crack, crack, crack. Han Shua's meridians ruptured and his bones crackled. A dazzling curtain of light enveloped Han Shua's entire body. All the potential in his body was forced out. In an instant, an incomparably enormous energy magnetic field erupted. The dazzling light flashed and disappeared. When the light dissipated, there was not a single trace left on the spot. Han Shua had vanished into thin air. A gloomy and cold middle-aged man suddenly appeared at the spot where Han Shua disappeared after a ray of icy light flashed past. How is this possible? His mouth was wide open and his face was filled with disbelief. His ice-cold eyes were glistening with light. He appeared extremely shocked. How is this possible? How could he have escaped? He's just a low god. There's no way he could have broken my boundary. What's going on? He mumbled to himself. He continuously examined the spot where Han Shua last stopped, trying to find the reason. After a while, the boundary of water suddenly distorted. A group of 5 people walked over. They were led by a cheerful young man who looked like a white priest of the Church of Light. He smilingly said, "Erickson, what took you so long? What are you doing?" After a short pause, he creased his brows and solemnly said, "He actually killed this Earth Dragon. The interplanar transportation matrix has been destroyed." An even louder cry of astonishment came from a woman who looked like a young woman. She appeared to be extremely frightened. Damn it, that youngster actually dared to come here. The interplanar transportation matrix has been destroyed. This is going to be a little difficult. We don't have anyone who cultivates in the Edict of Space with us this time. That cheerful young man knitted his brows deeply. After pondering for a moment, he hastily asked that person from the Shrine of Ice who was still mumbling to himself, "Erickson, where's that youngster's corpse? Did you find anything? The interplanar transportation matrix here has been destroyed. In that case, we must find the interplanar transportation matrix to the cemetery of death through him. Otherwise, it won't be easy for us to leave after this matter is over." Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Erickson was still mumbling to himself in astonishment. "Erickson, what are you doing? The interplanar transportation matrix has been destroyed. If you don't want to make a long and arduous journey back, quickly search his corpse," that cheerful young man softly shouted. Erickson suddenly came to his senses after hearing his loud shout. His body shuddered. He forced a smile, shook his head, and explained, "Kaiser, I couldn't kill that youngster. He escaped." "What? What did you say?" Not only the young man named Kaiser, but the few experts from the other material planes also cried out in alarm. Erickson was a mid-god. He had even strengthened the boundary around him beforehand. Even if a mid-god were to fight 10 low-gods, it would still be a sure-win situation. His opponents would have absolutely no chance of survival. But Erickson actually said that the youngster escaped? He really did escape. Up until now, I still don't understand how he escaped, Erickson said in a deep voice with a gloomy face when he saw that everyone was dumbstruck. At this point, everyone understood that Erickson was absolutely not joking. They were just as incredulous as Erickson earlier. They mumbled, "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Could it be that he has a space-splitting divine weapon?" Kaiser suddenly calmed down and asked in a deep voice, "No, I'm sure of it," Erickson firmly replied. "I have been observing his every move ever since he entered the boundary. I didn't sense him using any energy of the 12 fundamental forces, nor did I sense any abnormalities of using a space-splitting divine weapon. The space didn't change either. He just vanished into thin air." How? How is this possible? Kaiser was once again astonished. He pondered hard without saying a word. Before he vanished into thin air, something strange happened to his body. His meridians ruptured and his bones shattered. It was as though he had suffered a serious injury. "I don't know what actually happened," Erickson recalled for a moment and explained, "No matter what, we must find him as soon as possible. This person is too important. He is in control of the interplanar transportation matrix. It won't take long for those fellows to arrive. If we can't find that youngster and take control of the Cemetery of Death's interplanar transportation matrix before they arrive, this matter will become even more troublesome," Kaiser suddenly said in a deep voice after a moment of silence. The other 5, including Erickson, nodded solemnly at the same time. "Everyone, split up and search this continent with all your might. Don't miss a single place where he is most likely to be hiding. Remember, once you find him, don't be in a hurry to kill him. First, change the interplanar transportation matrix's settings. We must not let those fellows come over," Kaiser instructed. "When we find him, please do me a favor and capture him alive if you can. I want to skin him alive with my own hands," Erickson said fiercely. The party of 6 said no more. Before they left, Kaiser raised his hand and wrapped the Primordius dragon's corpse with a blazing light. The Primordius dragon gradually dissolved in the white light until it disappeared. Thousands of miles away, on a barren mountain on the western border of the Orc Empire, the blood-stained Han Shuo was miserably hanging from a withered tree. He cut an extremely sorry figure. The demonic blood disassembly had stimulated the latent potential within Han Shuo's body. The instant his meridians and bones were shattered, Han Shuo had fled thousands of miles away and escaped from Erickson's murderous hands. The demonic blood disassembly was a vicious demonic art used for escaping. Once it was released, it would greatly damage one's vitality and damage one's demonic body. This time, Han Shuo's meridians and bones were shattered. He had no strength left in his body. Coincidentally, he was hanging from a large tree. This made Han Shuo feel extremely unlucky. Within a day's time, Han Shuo's meridians and bones were completely destroyed. It was impossible for him to reconnect his meridians and bones to the point where he could move his limbs. Under such circumstances, Han Shuo could not gather the energy within his body, nor could he summon any undead creatures to protect him. He could only continue to waste his energy like this. During the recovery process, Han Shuo would be unable to move for a period of time. If an enemy were to approach during this time, Han Shuo would be as powerless as a lamb waiting to be slaughtered and would be at the mercy of the enemy. Fortunately, Han Shuo was able to determine the direction when he used the demonic blood disassembly to escape. He happened to arrive at this uninhabited barren mountain. Otherwise, if he were to fall into an orc tribe and be discovered by those barbaric orcs, Han Shuo would be in big trouble. Han Shuo maintained the miserable posture of hanging from the tree from dusk until dawn. Not a single living creature approached him. Han Shua secretly rejoiced in his heart. He rejoiced that the Orc Empire was barren and that there were no ferocious magical beasts nearby. Only then could he continue to recover his body. However, Han Shua's good luck did not last long. Not long after the sky brightened, the sound of footsteps slowly approaching made Han Shua a little apprehensive. This was Han Shua's most vulnerable moment. Even a child wielding a sharp weapon would be able to inflict serious damage on him in this state. It was really just a young orc. He was wrapped in a piece of animal skin, barefooted, and carried a large basket on his back. It seemed that he had come to this barren mountain to chop firewood. At first, he did not notice Han Shua on top of the withered tree above him. He only lowered his head and silently chopped the withered tree. It was only when a drop of blood dripped from Han Shua's body that he was surprised to think that it was going to rain did he naturally raise his head to look at the sky. As soon as he looked, he suddenly pointed at Han Shua and cried out in alarm. After killing so many orcs, Han Shua could understand the orc language with just one soul. Therefore, when Han Shua focused for a moment, he quickly understood the meaning of the gibberish. Ah, why is there a dead person? And it's a human. What bad luck today, to encounter something like this so early in the morning. Han Shua did not know whether to laugh or cry. The root of his tongue was broken, and he was currently recovering. He could not speak for the time being. He could only blink his eyes and look down at the young orc in confusion. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, the young orc muttered. Han Shua's heart trembled. He had not had much contact with orcs. He had long heard that orcs were extremely barbaric and seemed to have a hobby of eating humans. When he heard this young orc say that he had not eaten breakfast yet, Han Shua's state of mind, which had not been disturbed for many years, really panicked. Could it be, with Han Shua's physical body at the Nine Changes realm, even if the young orc stabbed him with a sharp weapon, he would be able to recover as long as he was given some time. However, if this young orc were to eat his flesh right in front of him, that would be too disgusting. While Han Shua was on tenterhooks, the young orc snorted and cursed. What a disgusting scene! How am I going to eat breakfast after seeing it for the entire morning? When he said this, the panicking Han Shua was overjoyed. It turned out that the young orc didn't want to eat human flesh. It seemed that the rumors about orcs outside were not entirely true. My mother said that people should be buried when they die. This guy is too unlucky. He actually died on a tree. Oh, forget it. It's sad to see him. I'll help him. The young orc muttered a few words. Then, he swung a not-so-sharp axe and began to chop down the tree that Han Shua was hanging on. Not long after, the tree collapsed with a loud bang. Han Shua fell to the ground, smashing a small pit in the ground. Chapter 645. Han Shua lay on the ground, gradually calming down as he listened to the young orc's shouts. Although the young orc was strong, it was difficult for him to truly harm Han Shua. With the strength of his body, even if the young orc used his axe to hack at him, Han Shua would still be able to recover afterwards. Therefore, Han Shua didn't appear to be flustered. He allowed the young orc to shout and wrangle as he silently waited for his body to recover. After a while, Han Shua opened his eyes, his deep, pitch-black pupils landing on the little orc. The young orc turned pale with fright when he was stared at by Han Shua. He abruptly took a dozen steps back and looked at Han Shua in fright, shouting in panic, "Are you dead or not?" Han Shua couldn't speak for the time being as his tongue hadn't recovered. He could only look at the little orc, blinking his eyes. The young orc stared at Han Shua in fright for a while. Seeing that Han Shua was only looking at him calmly without malice or taking any action, the young orc's courage grew a little. He then walked towards Han Shua. Is there anything I can help you with?" the young orc asked cautiously as he stared into Han Shua's eyes after thinking for a while. He was still a kind orc, Han Shua thought to himself. He continued to look at the young orc calmly, waiting for his tongue to recover. "What's wrong with you? Are you going to die? How can I help you?" The simple and honest young orc wasn't tainted by the bad habits of humans who killed and robbed. He only asked again and again with a sincere attitude. After a while, two streaks of blood flowed out from the corner of Han Shua's mouth. His mouth wriggled a little, and he suddenly spoke weakly in the orc language. "Thank you, but there's no need." The demonic infant in his body gradually recovered. Han Shua could feel that the cells and blood essence in the demonic infant were regrowing under the effect of demonic yuan. The demonic infant was the foundation of Han Shua's demonic body. As long as the demonic infant recovered, the source of Han Shua's demonic yuan would be able to operate. The recovery process of his body would also accelerate. The two avatars hidden in the demonic infant would also be able to immediately escape. Although Han Shua was anxious, he knew that this young orc wouldn't be able to help him at all. Therefore, he didn't bother to say anything. This place was 1,000 miles away from where the primordious dragon had perished. It wasn't too far, but it wasn't too short either. It wasn't too far either. For a divine realm expert, it wouldn't take too long to cross 1,000 miles without using any transportation matrices. That mid-god of the Shrine of Ice would definitely be unwilling to see Han Shua vanish right before his eyes. Han Shua was certain that that person wouldn't let him go. Perhaps, at this moment, that person had already started searching for traces of Han Shua from that area. Naturally, this young orc couldn't harm Han Shua. However, if that mid-god of the Shrine of Ice were to find him under such circumstances, Han Shua believed that only death awaited him. "No need? Your injuries are so severe. If we don't treat it in time, you will surely bleed to death." The young orc cried out in alarm and jumped up. "I've already stopped bleeding. Don't worry, I won't die. Just do whatever you need to do. Don't worry about me." As the demonic infant gradually recovered, Han Shua's weak voice became slightly louder. "I'll help you take care of it. I'm not asking for anything in return. You humans are always so strange. I've heard from my mother that you humans talk about repaying favors and not being willing to accept favors from others." The young orc didn't leave as Han Shua expected. He mumbled to himself, took out a small leather pouch from his waist, and took out a crude medicine bottle. He poured out some powder from the pouch and smeared it on Han Shua's scarred body. Han Shua could sense that the powder was just the most ordinary medicine to staunch bleeding and prevent bacterial infection. It was practically useless when smeared on Han Shua's body. "Thank you, but I really don't need it." Han Shua's voice slowly regained its calmness. His listless eyes also regained some vigor. "You've suffered such severe injuries. If you don't need it, nobody will. All right, don't worry. I'm not asking for anything in return. You're so annoying." The young orc grumbled impatiently. He didn't care whether Han Shua agreed or not. In any case, he smeared all the powder in his medicine bottle on Han Shua's wounds. It was obvious that this was a very kind-hearted young man. Feeling the slight coolness produced by the powder on his skin, Han Shua felt a warm feeling in his heart. "All right, do as you please." Han Shua said no more. He used his eyes to size up the young orc who was meticulously smearing the powder on his wounds and bandaging them without a care for the dirt. Looking at the young orc's attentive appearance, Han Shua, who was a little worried that the person from the Shrine of Ice might come looking for him at any time, gradually calmed down. As his mind calmed down, his body's recovery process seemed to have sped up a little. This phenomenon made him feel even more relaxed. "What's your name? What are you doing here?" Han Shua no longer cared about the condition of his body. Instead, he appeared to be very leisurely asking the young orc, "My name is Twaf. I'm here to chop some wood." He replied casually. Soon after, he said in a strange tone, "You're really a strange human. You're on the verge of death, yet you don't have the slightest reaction. You even have the mood to talk to me." As soon as the conversation began, the two gradually loosened their restraints. Through his communication with Twaf, Han Shua learned about his family circumstances. Through him, Han Shua also learned about the orc's hardships. As it turned out, because the land was barren and crops could not be cultivated, there were orcs starving to death every day. Those rumors about orcs eating humans were indeed true. Under such circumstances, if the orcs wished to survive, they had no choice but to think of other ways. Plundering the southern border was a helpless action they had to take in order to survive. Over the past 2 years, The Orc Empire had sunk into a predicament that had not been seen in 100 years. A large number of orcs had starved to death. Some of the older orcs were unwilling to waste food and committed suicide in groups so that their descendants could survive. Many orc villages were shrouded in the shadow of death. Under such circumstances, the major orc tribes were unprecedentedly united. They did not hesitate to sacrifice the lives of a large number of orc warriors in order to invade the southern border and occupy a piece of fertile land so that they could alleviate the miserable situation of their own empires that were littered with corpses. Twaf's village was considered to be in a better situation. It was only because there were some wild beasts in the surrounding barren hills that they could barely survive by relying on these wild beasts. However, the wild beasts in the barren hills were limited. Take the place where Han Shuo was staying, for example. There used to be many lone wolves, pythons, and the like, but they had all been captured and killed. Only withered trees were left to be used as firewood. As he listened to Twaf's description of the current situation in the Orc Empire, Han Shuo's heart was filled with mixed emotions. It was the first time he recognized the orcs' hardships. When he recalled that he had personally killed more than 100,000 orc warriors who had no choice but to come to the southern border for survival, he could not help but feel an indescribable sense of guilt. This conversation made Han Shuo realize that there were actually kind and upright people among the barbaric orcs. It was also because they had no other choice but to invade the southern border. If one were to look at things from a different perspective, one would sometimes come up with a different point of view. Finally, Han Shuo's demonic infant completed its restoration unknowingly while they were talking. With a thought, the avatar of death hidden in the demonic infant suddenly flew out and transformed into another identical Han Shuo in front of the young orc. This. The little orc retreated in shock. He pointed at the skeletal staff that had transformed into Han Shuo. He was so panic-stricken that he could not even finish his sentence. "You're a pretty good lad. It can be considered fate that we met today. Take this thing, and don't let anyone know about it. This thing will be useful to you. As long as you comprehend it with your heart, you might become an amazing great shaman." Han Shuo took out a necklace made of animal bones and hung it around the young orc's neck. A cold glint pierced through the young orc's fingertip, and a few drops of blood flowed into the necklace made of animal bones. In an instant, the young orc's face turned lifeless as though he had suffered a heavy blow. His body was on the verge of collapsing, as though it had been battered by turbulent waves. This necklace made of animal bones was obtained by Han Shuo when he killed the old shaman outside of Asen City. The old shaman was on the verge of breaking through to base god. The necklace made of animal bones was similar to a space ring and contained some kind of miraculous energy inherited from it. Han Shuo had no use for it all this time. The energy inherited from the necklace made of animal bones could only be received by an orc without any cultivation foundation. It could also be considered fate that he met Twaf. Although he did not really help Han Shuo still appreciated his kind intentions. In addition, Twaf was kind-hearted, honest, and straightforward. Therefore, Han Shuo decided to let him inherit the energy of the necklace made of animal bones. Of course, Twaf would not be able to reach the sky in a single bound after inheriting the energy. At most, he could only communicate with the powerful magical beasts that Twaf had subdued in the past. As for whether Twaf could subdue those powerful magical beasts or use the energy inherited from him to cultivate the secret shaman arts to the same realm as the old shaman, Han Shuo had no idea. Han Shuo had only pointed out a bright path to him. Whether he could walk to the end or not would still depend on Twaf himself. The slight trembling of Twaf's body signified the success of the energy inheritance. While he was clenching his teeth and enduring the energy inherited from him, Han Shuo's avatar of death had already left with his injured main body. Twaf felt as though he was in a turbulent current. Some strange things were surging into his brain and body, giving him an extremely uncomfortable feeling. After an unknown period of time, Twaf's body gradually stopped trembling. He felt that his brain was muddle-headed and filled with many things that did not belong to him. Where's that weirdo?" Twaf suddenly cried out in alarm after he regained consciousness. He lowered his head and discovered that the place where Han Shuo had just stood was completely empty. There was not even a trace of him. On the flat yellow ground, someone had used a finger to deeply carve some words. Twaff, it is fate that brought us together. I don't know if what I did was right or wrong for you, but I feel that the orcs need a leader like you. The profound meaning of shaman has been inherited into your body. If you are willing, you can continue to cultivate in silence and contribute to the orcs. When you can become a great shaman and have a certain level of authority among the orcs, and when you want to find a way out for the orcs, you can come to Lancelot Empire's Bretel City to look for me. I am the city lord of Bretel City, Brian. Remember these words. Inheritance of the profound meaning of shaman? What does that mean? What a strange human. Twaff muttered to himself as he looked at the words under his feet in a daze. All of a sudden, as though a ray of light had streaked across his mind, the muddle-headed orc teenager seemed to have understood something in an instant. He suddenly jumped up and started laughing like a madman. Ha, I can become a great shaman. This is unbelievable. I must have met the orc god. The orc god is guiding me. Asterisk. Although Han Shuo could predict that the orc teenager would be wild with joy after learning the truth, he did not expect that the orc teenager would become the most respected shaman among the orcs many years later. Not only that, but he had also solved the problem that had been troubling the orcs for a long time. His avatar of death carried Han Shuo's avatar and flew along some remote roads. They finally returned to South Border City at the southern border before the sky turned dark. In South Border City, Han Shuo had become a god that everyone revered. Han Shuo didn't even dare to show his face in public, fearing that he would cause a commotion among the people here. Draped in a pitch-black magical robe, Han Shuo used the transportation matrix and arrived at Bretel City. Without greeting anyone, he used the transportation matrix in Bretel City to return to the Cemetery of Death on the gourd-shaped island in the middle of the boundless sea. Just in case, he even changed the location of the transportation matrix in the depths of the city lord's mansion in Bretel City. He placed it under a filthy and smelly quagmire outside the city and concealed the magical aura on it with demonic arts. Those people should be very familiar with elemental energy. However, the power of demonic arts was different from any energy they were familiar with. Han Shuo believed that by concealing it with demonic arts, they would not be able to detect its location. Inside the Cemetery of Death on the gourd-shaped island in the boundless sea, Han Shuo's main body immediately resumed his cultivation. His two avatars of destruction stayed in the Cemetery of Death, while his avatar of death walked out. He wanted to see if there were any abnormalities in the surroundings to ensure that nothing would go wrong. Unexpectedly, as soon as Han Shuo's avatar of death walked out of the Cemetery of Death, he sensed a fairly strong soul occupying a deserted island not far away from the gourd-shaped island. That soul immediately sensed Han Shuo's presence. It furiously transmitted, "I've finally found you. If you don't scram back to my territory, I'll come and kill you." Han Shuo knew that the soul was the same one he sensed last time. A C super rank magical beast with strength similar to Pegasus. You're courting death. Han Shuo was not in a good mood. On top of that, he didn't want any living creature in the surroundings to reveal his whereabouts. Therefore, he immediately transmitted his killing intent to the soul. Chapter 646. That creature in the boundless sea had been searching for Han Shuo in the vicinity. It was fully deserving of its title as the mightiest being in this part of the sea. It was used to having all living creatures kneel at its feet. Any creature that dared to oppose it had long been killed by it. Over the years, its habitual victories had made it believe that it was the mightiest being on profound continent. If it wasn't for the fact that it couldn't leave the sea for too long, it might have long gone to stir up trouble on land. As soon as the creature received Han Shuo's message, it flew into a rage and charged straight at Han Shuo from the island with monstrous ferocity. Even though Han Shuo was on the gourd-shaped island, he could sense the enormous waves. He could tell that this creature was as large as the primordial dragon. Otherwise, the waves wouldn't have caused such a huge reaction. There was a cemetery of death on the gourd-shaped island. Han Shuo did not want to leave any traces of battle on the island. He immediately flew away from the gourd-shaped island as soon as he sensed the creature approaching. In the sea between the two islands, Han Shuo, who was hovering in the air, encountered the enormous creature in the depths of the sea. Waves rose to the sky like a hurricane. Sparkling and translucent water droplets rose from the bottom of the sea like a fine rain and rolled back into the depths of the sea. An enormous shadow gradually surfaced from the depths of the waves. With a loud crashing sound, the shadow emerged from the bottom of the sea and sent a furious message straight at Han Shuo. Damned human! The sea is not a place you should be. How dare you challenge my majesty? You will die today. Han Shuo had a clear view of the creature the moment it emerged from the bottom of the sea. It was a sea monster that resembled an octopus. It was enormous in size and had many tentacles. When it bared its fangs and brandished its claws, its tentacles extended and fluttered in all directions. It appeared to possess astonishing strength. The vital parts of the sea monster's abdomen were covered with a layer of shell-like armor. The armor was as hard as metal and protected the most important parts of its body from harm. As it bared its fangs and brandished its claws, the sea monster gradually flew out from the depths of the sea. Han Shuo had expected a creature of its level to be able to fly. Giant octopus, are you courting death? Han Shuo asked with a cold smile as he watched the sea monster bare its fangs and brandish its claws to threaten him. Some of the foreign races, due to their unique body structure, did not need to cultivate in any of the 12 fundamental forces. For example, the six-horned tribal king of the Soul race, Pegasus, and the ancient lizard king. These alien races either had extremely powerful bodies or special abilities. As long as they focused on one aspect and continued to evolve, they would grow stronger and stronger. This octopus-like sea creature should also be one of those alien races. Han Shuo couldn't sense the existence of any of the 12 fundamental forces in it, but its soul was extremely powerful. This made Han Shuo realize that this sea monster should have evolved using the alien race's innate talent. Big octopus? You actually think I'm such a lowly creature? Wretched human, you will pay for your unkindness. The sea monster flew to the surface of the sea. Water droplets were spraying all over its body as it furiously shouted, "Look at you! What are you if not an octopus?" Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment and found it rather hilarious. "I'm not an octopus. I've never been one." As though someone had poked a scar in its heart, the sea monster flew into a rage. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it charged at Han Shuo. Its enormous tentacles fluttered in the air. It was truly a beautiful sight. The domain of divinity couldn't be of much use against this kind of alien race that did not rely on elemental energy. Seeing the sea monster's tentacles fluttering in the air, Han Shuo sneered and consecutively deployed weakness, fear, and other necromancy boundaries around him. Before the sea monster could approach, Han Shuo had already cast one great disintegration after another at the sea monster. Under the effects of the several trump card boundaries of the netherworld, the sea monster's intimidating movements gradually became sluggish and powerless. Its flying speed became slower and slower. The boundaries deployed by the low-god realm Han Shuo were extremely effective against the sea monster and greatly affected it. The boundaries deployed by the low-god realm Han Shuo were extremely effective against the sea monster. The tentacles that fluttered in the air suddenly shattered and fell into the sea, splattering blood in all directions. Being at the center of the boundaries, the sea monster couldn't approach Han Shuo at all. Its tentacles were shattered one after another. This made the sea monster extremely furious, but there was nothing it could do. Wretched human, you are despicable. Unable to approach Han Shuo, the sea monster's body grew weaker and weaker. It could only roar powerlessly and furiously. "Himph, do you really think you're invincible with your meager strength?" Han Shuo sneered disdainfully as he looked at the sea monster struggling. Another necromancy magic was released. An enormous cage of bones appeared out of thin air below the sea monster. White bones were assembled together and forcefully trapped the sea monster's enormous body, preventing it from moving at will. Without Han Shuo making any movements, Rows of bone spears ruthlessly stabbed at the sea monster. The sea monster let out a series of strange cries as though it was in extreme pain. "You sure know how to put on an act," Han Shuo sneered. "I'm just a lowly and insignificant octopus. You won't gain anything by killing me. You'll just be wasting your energy." Seeing that Han Shuo was silent, the sea monster continued to prattle and beg. It had finally admitted that it was a lowly octopus. "Give me a reason not to kill you." Perhaps because this sea monster was very similar to Gilbert in some aspects, Han Shuo didn't kill it as he usually did. He only asked after a moment of silence, "I know a secret. There might be a great treasure hidden there. I can take you there as long as you don't kill me." The sea monster thought for a moment and hastily shouted after hearing Han Shuo's words, "Oh, what treasure?" Han Shuo wasn't particularly interested and casually asked, "I don't know either. That place is very mysterious. Even I can't enter it. But you're so powerful that you should be able to enter. I'm willing to take you there immediately as long as you don't kill me." The sea monster immediately became very anxious when it saw that Han Shuo wasn't particularly interested. "All right then, lead the way. If that place is really interesting, I'll consider sparing your life." Han Shuo was indifferent as he said indifferently. The sea monster felt as if it had been pardoned. It was as if it had grasped onto a life-saving straw. Just as it was about to lead the way, it immediately sensed the awkwardness of its current situation. It said pitifully, "Can you let me go first?" Han Shuo wasn't afraid that it would escape. Therefore, he withdrew the boundary energy and removed the huge cage of bones that had trapped it. "If you dare escape, I guarantee that you'll die a horrible death," Han Shuo warned with a cold smile. The sea monster was startled and repeatedly said that it wouldn't dare. Its huge body suddenly fell into the sea, and its huge shadow rapidly disappeared into the distance. This sea monster truly possessed the characteristics of an octopus. The tentacles that had been severed by Han Shuo didn't sink after falling into the sea. When the sea monster's huge body fell into the sea, its severed tentacles actually coiled around the severed parts like little snakes and stuck tightly together. It seemed that it wouldn't be difficult for the severed tentacles to regenerate after some time. After a moment of observation, Han Shuo was quite amazed by this sea monster's self-healing ability. He wondered if the creator of the demonic arts had used this creature's ability when he created the body-shaping secret art. This was because its self-healing ability was even more miraculous than that of an octopus. Han Shuo unhurriedly followed behind the sea monster. He discovered that the sea monster was indeed very well behaved. It didn't even dare to deliberately slow down. It seemed that it was indeed afraid of Han Shuo's deterrence. They soon arrived at their destination. It wasn't far from the sea monster's original position. It was the area that Han Shuo's consciousness couldn't enter the last time he tried to extend it. "So it's here. I should have known," Han Shuo mumbled to himself when he arrived. How did you know this place?" "Impossible. You shouldn't know this place. I was the first to discover this place. There's no one more familiar with this place than me. I've never seen you here before. It's impossible for you to know this place." The sea monster suddenly raised its voice when it heard Han Shuo's mumbling. "Don't talk nonsense. I discovered this place by accident when I sensed your position last time. What's there to make a fuss about?" Han Shuo snorted impatiently. The sea monster immediately recalled its situation and tactfully shut its mouth. It didn't dare to say anything else. Seeing that the sea monster had shut its mouth, Han Shuo dove into the sea and followed the sea monster to the bottom of the island. In the depths of the island, there was a cluster of seaweed. He sensed the existence of the boundary that had blocked his consciousness last time. "This is the place, right?" Han Shuo asked indifferently. "Yes, it seems that there's something invisible blocking it. I can't get in," the sea monster explained. The sea monster explained. After a pause, the sea monster suddenly said faintly, "But there are some peculiar energies that would overflow in this place. When I was just a little octopus, I accidentally ate something here and was struck by the overflowing energy. That's how I ended up like this." What? Han Shuo was taken aback. Looking at the incomparably enormous sea monster, he cried out in disbelief, The energy that overflowed from you made you so powerful? Yes, I'm sure. The sea monster hastily replied. It was rather miraculous. Han Shuo was extremely astonished. The energy that flowed out from the boundary had struck a little octopus, and then the little octopus had turned into an overlord of the ocean. This made Han Shuo feel that the boundary was inconceivable. Han Shuo's heart was in turmoil. He looked at the invisible boundary in front of him and pondered for a moment. He felt that only by touching it with his hand could he truly understand what kind of energy was attached to the boundary. Han Shuo slowly walked to the front, stretched out his hand and gradually pressed it against the boundary. Before he could get close to the boundary, a peculiar energy suddenly gushed out and curled towards Han Shuo's outstretched hand. The energy was so powerful that even Han Shuo, who was at this realm, had no choice but to retreat in a panic. A ball of misty green light that was full of vitality flashed across the surface of the boundary. Soon after, the boundary returned to normal. Han Shuo, who had retreated at top speed, broke out in cold sweat. He sensed an extremely powerful attack from the boundary, and it was aimed at him. After carefully thinking for a moment, Han Shuo came to a sudden realization. He cried out in surprise. So it's the energy of the Edict of Life. No wonder, no wonder. Only the mysterious Edict of Life could change the life form of the giant octopus and make it so powerful. The Edict of Life and the elemental energy of death had always been mutually exclusive. It was only natural that Han Shuo's avatar of death would be attacked by the boundary. After weighing the pros and cons in his mind, Han Shuo felt that he didn't have the strength to resist the boundary. He pondered for a moment and suddenly recalled Wood Elite Zombie. He was overjoyed and immediately summoned Wood Elite Zombie. Chapter 647. Wood Elite Zombie's energy was brimming with vitality, in line with the Edict of Life. After he obtained the Virile Leaf, the wood attribute treasure, he had once again evolved. Therefore, opening this boundary shouldn't be a problem. After being summoned, Wood Elite Zombie looked around in astonishment. Suddenly, he pointed at the boundary and transmitted to Han Shuo, "Father, there's something strange in there." Han Shuo didn't find it strange in the slightest. Nodding, Han Shuo replied smilingly, "That's right. There's something strange in there that might be useful to you. Can you go in?" "I don't know," Wood Elite Zombie replied. After a short pause, he continued, "But I can give it a try." "All right, try your best to open it and see what's going on inside," instructed Han Shuo. What the hell is going on?" The sea monster exclaimed in surprise when it saw that there was another person in the room. As the 5 elite zombies gradually evolved, they became less and less like stiff and lifeless zombies. While their strength rapidly increased, the aura of death on their bodies gradually disappeared. They were becoming more and more like ordinary humans. This was especially true for Wood Elite Zombie. After obtaining the Virile Leaf, Wood Elite Zombie had evolved to the next level. The aura of death on his body was completely gone. On the contrary, one could sense the energy brimming with vitality on his body. Even his appearance had undergone some changes. His complexion was becoming more and more normal. "It's none of your business. Stay here with me and don't move." Han Shuo shot a glance at the sea monster and coldly instructed. After the previous battle, the sea monster was fearful of Han Shuo and dared not disobey Han Shuo. Although it was puzzled, it did not say anything. It remained silent and focused its attention on Wood Elite Zombie. It wanted to see what Wood Elite Zombie was going to do. After arriving before the boundary, Wood Elite Zombie stretched out his hand. An energy brimming with vitality flowed into the boundary through Wood Elite Zombie's palm. The boundary that was filled with hostility towards Han Shuo and would automatically attack the moment it sensed the energy of death in Han Shuo's body approaching. This time, it did not have the slightest intention of attacking. It appeared to be very calm. "Father, I can go in. I feel very comfortable with this energy. It doesn't have any ill intent towards me," Wood Elite Zombie happily transmitted to Han Shuo. Everything was within Han Shuo's expectations. After hearing Wood Elite Zombie's words, Han Shuo thought for a moment and said, "All right then, go in and see what's going on inside." If you can remove the barrier, try to remove it. All right. The Wood Elite Zombie replied excitedly, somewhat impatient. It seemed that he was very interested in what was inside. Wood Elite Zombie's body melted into the barrier like a drop of water in front of Han Shuo and the sea monster. The barrier did not rebound in the slightest. He disappeared. Disappeared inside? How is that possible? The sea monster had been paying attention to Wood Elite Zombie. When he saw that Wood Elite Zombie was able to enter the place that he had been unable to enter all this while, he cried out in surprise. Cut the crap. Just watch carefully. Han Shuo softly groaned. The sea monster once again shut his mouth. His soul became extremely unstable. Many of the tentacles on his enormous body swayed involuntarily, as though expressing his amazement and disbelief. Although Han Shuo could detect Wood Elite Zombie's position the moment he entered the barrier, he could not sense what was going on inside the barrier through Wood Elite Zombie. Just like the sea monster, Han Shuo maintained his silence. Just like that, Han Shuo and the sea monster stood outside the barrier, waiting for any changes that might occur to the barrier. Soon after, the invisible barrier once again emitted gentle green halos that were as weak as the glow of fireflies. Gradually, those faint green halos and the barrier seemed to be pulled back little by some kind of energy. Han Shuo could sense that the barrier that had been obstructing him was gradually disappearing. The sea monster also noticed this. Its tentacles swayed even more vigorously, but it dared not make a ruckus. Soon enough, the green halos gradually retracted. The scenery that had been obstructed finally appeared before Han Shuo and the sea monster's eyes. A small tree with lush branches and leaves appeared at the bottom of the island. This small tree wasn't very big, and every leaf was as green as jade, faintly emitting a faint green light. The small branches were intertwined and full of vitality, and the aura of life was extremely exuberant. The Wood Elite Zombie stood in front of the small tree, carefully sizing it up, as if he was fascinated by it. How is this possible? How can such a strange tree survive at the bottom of the ocean? The sea monster cried out in surprise, unable to restrain its curiosity. Nothing is impossible. Han Shuo softly cried out. Soon after, he delightfully transmitted to Earth Elite Zombie, try to absorb the energy contained in that tree. By now, Han Shuo was no longer an ignorant and ill-informed person. Through the memories left behind by the original owner of the skeletal staff, and through the knowledge of Bichimos and that person inside the Holy Grail, Han Shuo had gained some understanding of the general knowledge of various material planes. That small tree emitting an extremely dense aura of life should be the legendary Tree of Life. It was said that those who cultivated in the Edict of Life could, under certain special circumstances, pass on the energy of life before their death and transform into a Tree of Life. This Tree of Life before Han Shuo should be a cultivator of the Edict of Life who, knowing that his life was nearing its end, altered his life imprint and transformed into a Tree of Life. In a certain sense, the god who transformed into a Tree of Life didn't die, but merely changed his way of life. A Tree of Life that was transformed by a god into a Tree of Life contained an intense energy of life, and perhaps even some of that god's consciousness. It was very precious. Han Shuo had only heard of legends that those who cultivated in the Edict of Life could transform into a Tree of Life. He also knew that the Tree of Life was very miraculous. However, Han Shuo wasn't particularly clear about its specific uses. Han Shuo believed that the Tree of Life would be extremely useful to Wood Elite Zombie. From what Han Shuo saw, Wood Elite Zombie could only reap the greatest benefits by taking possession of the Tree of Life. The best way to take possession of the Tree of Life was to absorb all the energy of life from the Tree of Life. Wood Elite Zombie stood in front of the Tree of Life and stared blankly for quite a while. Even after receiving Han Shuo's message, Wood Elite Zombie remained silent. After an indeterminate amount of time, as though he suddenly recalled Han Shuo's instructions, Wood Elite Zombie took out the wood attribute treasure, the virile leaf, and placed it on the Tree of Life. In an instant, both the Tree of Life and the virile leaf blossomed with dazzling green radiance. Vigorous energy of life erupted from the Tree of Life and rapidly flowed into Wood Elite Zombie through the virile leaf. It's actually working, Han Shuo cried out in surprise, appearing extremely astonished. Han Shuo had indeed issued that order to Wood Elite Zombie. However, Han Shuo wasn't sure if that order would allow Wood Elite Zombie to absorb the energy from the Tree of Life. When the vitality of the Tree of Life flourished and frantically flowed into Wood Elite Zombie's body, Han Shuo was immediately startled and overjoyed. What is he doing? The sea monster couldn't help but ask urgently. He's absorbing the energy inside. It's the energy that allowed you to evolve from a little octopus to this state. Han Shuo was overjoyed and laughed heartily. I want it too, the sea monster suddenly said after staring blankly for a long while. You are the one who wants to die, aren't you? Han Shuo looked at the sea monster in amusement and said disdainfully, your body simply can't withstand too much of that energy. You'd better give up. Han Shuo was telling the truth. The reason Wood Elite Zombie could absorb the energy from the Tree of Life was that his energy came from the same source as that energy. In addition, Wood Elite Zombie had a unique body structure that allowed him to absorb the energy from the Tree of Life. The sea monster's evolution back then was indeed triggered by the energy of life from the Tree of Life. However, Han Shuo believed that it was something that happened a long time ago. The reason why he could slowly evolve to his current strength was absolutely not just because of that bit of energy of life. The energy of life merely opened a door for him. He should be relying on himself for the subsequent evolution. If one were to forcefully absorb too much energy from a different type of energy, only death would await them. Fortunately, the sea monster had only obtained a little bit of energy of life. If he had been struck by a lot of energy, he would have died. It was absolutely impossible for him to evolve to this stage. Under Han Shuo's attentive gaze, the energy of the Tree of Life rapidly flowed into Wood Elite Zombie. In the process, the radiance of the Tree of Life gradually dimmed. Not long after, the Tree of Life withered. Its leaves dried up and fell off one after another. The energy that was brimming with vitality vanished. On the other hand, Earth Elite Zombie's pale face turned rosy. His complexion was getting better and better. The virile leaf in his hand was lush and verdant. It seemed to be brimming with energy. In the end, the energy of the Tree of Life was completely exhausted. In Han Shuo's eyes, the roots of the Tree of Life had turned into dried bones. There was no trace of wood left. It appeared that after the energy of life was exhausted, the original appearance of the god that had transformed into the Tree of Life was gradually revealed. While Wood Elite Zombie was enjoying the energy that he had suddenly obtained, Han Shuo, on the other hand, was concentrating on observing the surroundings of the bones. However, he did not discover any traces that could reveal his identity. After a long while Han Shuo was still diligently observing the traces of the Tree of Life, Wood Elite Zombie suddenly said, "Father, I know you are injured. I can help you. Take me back." Han Shuo, who had sunk into contemplation, was jolted awake. Soon after, he asked in a somewhat stunned manner, "Help me? What do you mean?" "I don't know why, but I think I can use the energy that I have just obtained to speed up the recovery process of your body," Wood Elite Zombie transmitted. Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment. After thinking for a moment, he felt that perhaps the energy of life could really be of help to his physical body. Therefore, he cheerfully nodded. "All right, let's go back and give it a try." Upon finishing those words, Han Shuo once again carefully examined the roots of the Tree of Life that had lost the energy of life and had turned into a pile of bones. He discovered that there was not a trace of life energy left in it. With a wave of his large hand, the soil was stirred up. The remains of the god that had died for God knows how long were buried deep in the ground. So what if one cultivated in the edict of life? One would still die. This was the rule of nature. Who could truly change it? Even if one could change the form of life, could one really be reborn? Han Shuo thought to himself as he headed upwards. When Han Shuo returned to the surface of the ocean, he discovered that the sea monster was following him pitifully. When the sea monster saw that Han Shuo was about to leave, it cautiously asked, "Did you spare me?" "That's right, I have indeed spared you. But for the time being, you will have to stay in one place." Han Shuo thought for a moment and replied in an indifferent tone. If those from the Church of Light and the Shrine of Ice were to come over to investigate and discover the sea monster's presence, it was very likely that they would discover Han Shua's hiding place through the sea monster. Therefore, Han Shua planned to bring the sea monster into the Cemetery of Death until this matter was over. But I can't leave the water for too long, the sea monster said anxiously. You have already reached this realm. You can at least change your body shape, right? Han Shua asked smilingly after thinking for a moment. That's possible, the sea monster answered honestly. That's good then. Come, shrink yourself a little. I will let you have water, Han Shua said smilingly. The sea monster had an ominous premonition. However, it was afraid that Han Shua would kill it. Therefore, it obediently changed its body shape. In the end, it turned into a strange octopus that was slightly smaller than a human and had shell armor. A large glass container suddenly covered it. Han Shua filled the glass container with water and said with an evil smile, "Isn't this good? You will always have water." "Ah, no. I don't want to become like this. This is too humiliating." The sea monster cried out loudly. It wanted to cry but had no tears. "It's not up to you," Han Shua said mischievously. He applied a few boundaries on the large glass container and carried it back to the gourd-shaped island. They walked into the Cemetery of Death. After casually placing the sea monster on the ground, Han Shua and Wood Elite Zombie arrived at Han Shua's main body. Han Shua's main body had suffered extremely serious injuries. Even with Han Shua's astonishing regenerative ability, it wasn't an easy task for him to recover in a short period of time. After Wood Elite Zombie arrived, he placed the Viride leaf on the chest of Han Shua's main body. Through the Viride leaf, life energy slowly poured into Han Shua's body that was riddled with scars. Han Shua's body didn't have the slightest trace of the elemental energy of death. The vigorous life energy didn't reject his main body. As soon as it entered Han Shua's main body, under Wood Elite Zombie's control, it suddenly underwent a transformation. Under the effect of the life energy, the recovery process was accelerated by tens of times. His internal organs, tendons, veins, and bones were rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was extremely miraculous. It didn't take long before all the important parts of Han Shua's body returned to normal. Not a single trace of blood could be seen. The demonic yuan could once again flow rapidly and unimpeded through his body. The heavy injuries he suffered from using the demonic blood disassembly were greatly healed. What a miraculous life energy! Han Shua stood up and laughed heartily. Chapter 648. How is it? Not bad, right? The Wood Elite Zombie smugly asked Han Shua for credit after he was done with all this. Very good. Han Shua praised from the bottom of his heart. Hee, this is a lot of energy. I will need some time to digest it. Now, I can be as strong as them. Wood Elite Zombie transmitted to Han Shua. Han Shua understood Wood Elite Zombie's intention. He nodded and sent Wood Elite Zombie back to the netherworld without saying a word. In the following days, Han Shua stayed in the Cemetery of Death. Thanks to Wood Elite Zombie's life energy, his physical body had fully recovered and became even more resilient and powerful than before. Every time the demonic body was damaged and repaired, it would become even stronger than before. This was an extremely frightening characteristic. After Han Shua's body was fully healed, his demonic yuan flowed unimpeded through his body. The terrifying energy was concealed in his demonic infant. The recovery of his physical body had consumed some of Han Shua's demonic yuan. Fortunately, as his physical body was fully healed, he only needed some time to replenish all the demonic yuan he had consumed. Han Shua's two avatars remained in the Cemetery of Death, silently comprehending the energy of death and edictal force. His avatar of death, having obtained the divine soul of a mid-god, had advanced to the mid-stage low-god realm after 2 battles with the primordious dragon and the mid-god's comprehension of the elemental energy of death. After becoming a god, the advancement of even a small realm was a long process. If any ordinary god were to know that Han Shua could advance his avatar of death from early stage to mid-stage in such a short period of time, they would surely be astonished by Han Shua's speed. As his avatar of destruction did not have any experience in the Edict of Destruction to digest, its advancement wasn't as fast as his avatar of death. However, Han Shua wasn't discouraged. After every battle, he would diligently comprehend the usage of the Edict of Destruction and the true essence of the operation of the Edict of Destruction. Regardless of the situation outside, Han Shua's state of mind wasn't affected in the slightest while he was in the cemetery of death. He silently comprehended the true essence of energy. With one thought, Han Shua suddenly sensed that 3 souls had formed a miraculous connection with him. After a while, Han Shua's face lit up with joy. His body flashed, and he suddenly landed in the open space in front of the cemetery of death. The spirit demon formation that Han Shua had moved here no longer had any strange changes. The spirit demons that were placed in a triangular formation did not seem to have any vitality. However, Han Shua could sense the consciousness of the 3 spirit demons. As expected, the refinement was successful. Han Shua smiled and mumbled to himself. He walked to the location of the first spirit demon and reached out his hand. Devil light glowed from his palm and shone on the spirit demon. Han Shua slowly closed his eyes and practiced with the spirit demon inside, carrying out the liberation of his soul. Gradually, the dark radiance enveloped Han Shua's palm. The spirit demon that was in a dormant state seemed to be very excited when it sensed Han Shua's existence. Its soul was very lively. Like a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon, the faint mist that enveloped the spirit demon was blown away by the wind. A hazy shadow twisted within the mist and suddenly flew out. It flashed into Han Shua's body and disappeared. An unfamiliar energy was entrenched in his demonic infant like a small worm. It appeared to be very peaceful. The newly born spirit demon was extremely reliant on Han Shua. It also needed Han Shua's energy to replenish its growth. Han Shua was well aware of this. Han Shua repeated the same method. The other 2 spirit demons shrank to the size of a grain of rice and entrenched themselves in Han Shua's demonic infant. Compared to the mystical demons and demons that he had refined before, the spirit demon was a demon in the truest sense of the word. Although the mystical demons and demons were also demon generals, they mostly served as Han Shua's eyes to spy on his surroundings. They did not possess much offensive power. Spirit demons, on the other hand, were different. Perhaps it was because the refining conditions were too harsh that not only did spirit demons inherit all the wonderful functions of the previous demon generals, they also possessed extremely powerful offensive power. Most importantly, spirit demons could evolve infinitely. Every time they evolved, they would grow stronger and their offensive power would grow more and more terrifying. Han Shua kept the 3 spirit demons one after another. After pondering for a moment, he destroyed the formation used to refine spirit demons. Han Shua did not leave the cemetery of death at such a crucial moment. Han Shua also withdrew his 2 avatars into his body. He sat cross-legged next to the enormous interplanar transportation matrix, waiting for the experts from the alien material plane to descend. On the summit of a barren mountain near Bretel City, the few gods who had arrived earlier gathered together. Kaiser and Erickson wore grave expressions. They appeared extremely agitated, as though they were troubled by something. Have you searched the entire continent? Caesar was silent for a long time before he suddenly asked. We've searched almost the entire continent, but we still couldn't find any trace of him, Erickson of the Shrine of Ice answered with a gloomy face. Where exactly did that youngster place the interplanar transportation matrix? Why can't we find any trace of it? Although that youngster's strength is mediocre, he's still an opponent that we can't afford to ignore. Kaiser scratched his head in annoyance and sighed. Erickson, who had fought against Han Shua before, nodded and agreed. That's right. I've fought against that youngster before. He's very cunning and has a firm will. He's definitely not someone who gives in easily. If we can't find him, we won't know the location of the interplanar transportation matrix. We don't have much time left. Those guys should be arriving soon. We're in big trouble now. Why don't we capture all of that youngster's friends, release this information, and wait for him to take the bait? the woman suggested after thinking for a moment. Kaiser creased his brows and said unhappily, "Mary, no matter what, we are gods. There's no need to resort to such a despicable method. Besides, I don't think such a method will work. Forget it." The beautiful woman stared blankly for a moment. She responded respectfully on the surface, but she was cursing inwardly. It's not like the Church of Light hasn't done such things before. Why are you acting so righteous? We can't find that youngster no matter what. Why don't we destroy the Calamity Church first? Erickson suggested. Kaiser shook his head and rejected the idea. The Calamity Church of a mere low-level material plane isn't worth our time. How about this? We haven't figured out the path to the underground world yet. While we still have some time, let's first figure out the path to the deepest part of the underground world. If possible, we'll cut off their path. What do you all think? Entering the deepest part of the underground world was indeed much more important than destroying the Calamity Church. After hearing Kaiser's suggestion, the few of them pondered for a moment and agreed to Kaiser's decision. After making up their minds, the few of them soared into the sky and flew towards the entrance to the underground world from the dark forest. Not far from the barren mountain beneath them, in the depths of a quagmire, there was a small-scale transportation matrix that led to the boundless sea. However, this small-scale interplanar transportation matrix had been concealed by Han Shuo using a demonic secret art. Although these gods from high-level material planes had searched with all their might, they were unable to detect the concealment magic deployed by demonic arts. They were unable to find traces of Han Shuo through the small-scale interplanar transportation matrix not far away. It was a good thing that Han Shuo had meticulously blocked the small transportation matrix with the power of demonic yuan before he'd left. Otherwise, with the strength of these people, they might really have been able to find the small transportation matrix and use it to capture Han Shuo, dealing him a devastating blow. ******, the underground world, the hiding place of the dark dragons. Grandpa, I should go back. Brian must be worried about me after being away for so long. If I don't go find him soon, he'll tear me apart. Gilbert had been staying here for some time. During this time, Gilbert and his grandfather, Gilgs, had enjoyed the bliss of a family and paid their respects to his deceased father. Gilgs was extremely excited to see his grandson. Previously, Gilbert had exhausted his life force for the sake of the dark dragons, causing the old fellow to be in agony for a long period of time. Although Han Shuo had promised Gilgs that he would definitely return a lively little dark dragon to him, Gilgs had always thought that Han Shuo was merely comforting him. Especially after Han Shuo had entered the Abyss Realm, there had been no news of him for 5 years. Gilgs had indeed believed that Han Shuo had died in the hands of the Church of Light. He had truly despaired. In the saddest days of his life, Dark Dragon Gilbert had suddenly appeared. Moreover, his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. For Gilgs, he had been pleasantly surprised and had repeatedly urged Gilbert to stay and spend some time with him. These days were the happiest for the patriarch of the Dark Dragons, Gilgs. He had dragged the little Dark Dragon to tell him many old stories of the Dark Dragons, allowing the little Dark Dragon to understand many secrets of the Dark Dragons. The old Dark Dragon had the intention of letting Gilbert take over the Dark Dragons. Therefore, he had taken the trouble to tell him the secrets of the Dark Dragons, as well as the principles of the Dark Dragons. Although Gilbert wasn't interested in taking over the Dark Dragons, he couldn't resist the old Dark Dragon's enthusiasm. Therefore, he had to listen to everything with a bitter face. "Brat, you're always talking about Brian this and Brian that. Even I, your grandpa, am a little jealous." The old Dark Dragon puffed his beard and glared, pretending to be displeased. In his heart, the old Dark Dragon was very grateful to Han Shuo, not only because Han Shuo had resurrected Gilbert, but also because Han Shuo had saved the Dark Dragons back in the underground world. From Gilbert, the old Dark Dragon learned that Han Shuo was getting stronger and stronger. Therefore, the old Dark Dragon was very gratified and relieved that Gilbert was with Han Shuo. Brian isn't as long-winded as you are. I'm already sick of hearing you talk about the past every day. This place is really a little boring. It's much more interesting when I'm with Blair. You see, If I were by his side, I could have put in some effort to avenge my clansmen when the Shrine of Ice was annihilated, Gilbert said in a frivolous manner. Forget it. Forget it. I've said all that needs to be said. You can go back and find your Brian. But remember, whenever you're free, come back and visit this old man. Otherwise, I'll rush to the surface world and catch you and give you a good beating. The old dark dragon threatened. Got it. Got it. You're so long-winded. Gilbert replied with a headache and flew outside. He was really tired of listening to the old dark dragon's explanation of the secrets of the dark dragons. The old dark dragon smiled bitterly and sighed. He thought to himself, this kid is really a good-for-nothing. I've raised you up, but all you know is to run outside every day. That kid Brian really has some tricks up his sleeve. Not long after Dark Dragon Gilbert left, Kaiser and his party suddenly arrived. Previously, Erickson had already learned from Ice Celestial Corey that the secret leading to the deepest part of the underground world was held by the race of dark dragons. With their remarkable abilities, it only took them a brief investigation to find the hiding place of the dark dragons. Who are you people? The old dark dragon was instinctively afraid of Kaiser's scent and Erickson's icy aura. He hastily shouted and asked. The dark dragons that were entrenched in various directions rushed over upon hearing the news. They looked at the uninvited guests as if they were facing a great enemy. You're the patriarch of the dark dragons? Kaiser smiled and asked mildly. That's right. What do you want? How did you find this place? The old dark dragon was flustered. He suddenly felt so powerless in front of these people that he couldn't even muster the strength to resist. That's right. Kaiser chuckled and sternly said to Gilgs, little worm, tell me the secret to the deepest part of the underground world that you've been guarding all this time. Maybe if I'm in a good mood, I'll leave some of you alive. Who are you people? What do you want? The old dark dragon was horrified and hastily said, everyone, run as far as you can. The old dark dragon shrieked, you're too ignorant of the times. Kaiser frowned and shook his head. He then instructed the few people behind him, except for this old one, kill the rest. Erickson remained motionless. The other gods with weaker strength made their moves one after another. The dark dragons didn't even have the chance to escape. They were like worms in front of them. They didn't even have the strength to resist and quickly died in their hands. In just a few blinks of an eye, the ground was littered with the corpses of the dark dragons. Not a single dark dragon managed to escape. I won't say anything even if I die. Sooner or later, someone will avenge us. The old dark dragon was inconsolable and was ready to commit suicide. Dean, get me the secret of his soul before he dies, Kaiser casually instructed. Caesar casually instructed before he chuckled light-heartedly and muttered to himself, who in this continent can take revenge for all of you? What a naive reptile. An even younger god instantly appeared above the old dark dragon's head. A ray of light shrouded the old dark dragon's head. The old dark dragon suddenly let out a miserable shriek as his life force gradually disappeared. All right, I found it. I'll lead the way. The young god called Dean closed his palm. The old dark dragon fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. Everyone, let's go, Kaiser instructed, and the group swaggered off. Inside the Cemetery of Death, the enormous interplanar transportation matrix next to Han Shua suddenly shone brightly, startling Han Shua out of his meditative state. Chapter 649. Han Shua, who had been sitting in silence for a long time, suddenly stood up when he saw the enormous interplanar transportation matrix next to him radiating dazzling white light. He concentrated all his attention on the interplanar transportation matrix. Han Shua had been waiting for this moment for a long time. When he saw the interplanar transportation matrix radiating white light, he knew that the experts from alien material planes were about to appear inside the interplanar transportation matrix. A soft exclamation sounded from the interplanar transportation matrix. The light dispersed and 2 women and 3 men walked out from the matrix. At the forefront was a charming, beautiful woman wearing a navy blue gauze skirt. She had bright eyes and white teeth. Her entire body was brimming with the element of darkness. Han Shuo could sense an extremely terrifying energy from her body. She was definitely a mid-god expert. Han Shuo was immediately startled. Behind the beautiful woman was a skinny old man who cultivated in the elemental energy of death. He possessed approximately late-stage low-god strength. Behind the old man were two youngsters cultivating in the Edict of Destruction. Both of them had dignified appearances and approximately late-stage low-god strength. The last one was a young lady in a short purple skirt. She had snow-white arms and a delicate face. However, her eyes were unusually cunning. She cultivated in the elemental energy of death and was also a mid-stage low-god. The party of 5 consisted of a beautiful woman, a young lady, an old man, and 2 young men. Other than the beautiful woman whose strength was unfathomable, the other 4 were all late-stage low-gods. This caused Han Shua's heart to sink. "Big guy, you're the one who will be receiving us? Huh, why do you look so dull?" The young lady rolled her eyes, and her quick-witted eyes landed on Han Shuo. She chuckled rudely. "Li Wei, what are you talking about?" The beautiful woman first chided the young lady smilingly before walking out of the interplanar transportation matrix. She glanced at her surroundings and said to Han Shuo, "Li Wei is a little mischievous. Don't mind her." By now, Han Shuo had calmed down from the surprise of the party's arrival. He put on a bright smile and said in a relaxed manner, "Welcome to Profound Continent, a low-level material plane. It must be boring." Li Wei wrinkled her nose and stretched her body. She looked around as though she was looking for something that could interest her. "Li Wei, why don't I show you around this low-level material plane? Let's see if there's anything interesting in this low-level material plane," suggested one of the young men who cultivated in the Edict of Destruction. Yes, let's go." Li Wei was overjoyed and hastily agreed. "Before the situation is clear, do not act alone," the beautiful woman frowned and said. After hearing Donna's words, Li Wei helplessly spread out her hands at the young man and lazily said, "I know, big sister Donna. You are really strict." The beautiful woman, Donna, smiled and said helplessly, "We didn't come here to play this time. Those fellows might have already arrived. In this unfamiliar continent, it will be dangerous if we encounter them alone. Let's figure out the situation on this continent first before we decide on a course of action." After sizing up the 5 and listening to their conversation for a while, Han Shuo could roughly tell that the beautiful woman named Donna was the leader of the party. The old man who cultivated in the elemental energy of death was silent. He looked at Li Wei with eyes filled with respect, as though he was her servant. Of the 2 young men who cultivated in the Edict of Destruction, the one who spoke to Li Wei was more talkative while the other was taciturn. "We don't know much about the specific situation on this continent. Can you give us a brief introduction?" Donna asked Han Shuo smilingly after gesturing for the party to be quiet. The other 4 stopped their chatter when they heard that Donna was getting down to business. Their gazes simultaneously gathered on Han Shuo, silently sizing up Han Shuo. Faced with the probing gazes of the 5, Han Shuo put on a calm smile and calmly said, "I don't have much to say about the situation on this continent. I reckon that you won't be interested, right? I'll give you a brief summary of the situation related to your mission. The entrance to the underground world is located in a forest. The path leading to the deepest part of the forest is controlled by the race of dark dragons. I have a close relationship with the race of dark dragons, and it won't be a problem for them to find the path. Your enemies have arrived on this continent ahead of you. As I have to guard this interplanar transportation matrix, I don't know their current location and movements for the time being. All I know is that one of them is a mid-god from the Shrine of Ice." After skipping over some unimportant details, Han Shuo briefly described some of the most basic situations on Profound Continent and his understanding of those people. Very detailed. Not bad," Donna nodded smilingly. Then, she changed the topic and asked, "By the way, what's your name?" "Brian," Han Shuo replied. "Oh, Brian, let me introduce you," Donna said as she turned around. She pointed at the young lady behind her and smilingly said, "Li Wei, late-stage low-god of death. She is from the house of Kieran. That old man over there is her servant. He is a late-stage low-god just like her." His name is Colbert. The other two are my brothers who cultivate in the Edict of Destruction. Their names are Bolton and Bowen from the House of Brooke. I'm Donna. I might have to trouble you in the future on this material plane." Every time Donna introduced someone to them, they would nod at Han Shuo in greeting. However, it could be seen that none of the five actually took Han Shuo seriously. They merely returned the greetings out of courtesy and not from the bottom of their hearts. In their eyes, Han Shuo, a minor god from a low-level material plane, should be the kind of person who did not carry much weight and could only provide guidance. It was only natural that they would not give Han Shuo the respect he deserved in the truest sense of the word. Donna mentioned the family clans of the four, but did not mention her own origins. This puzzled Han Shuo. According to the memories left behind by Bichimos and the original owner of the skeletal staff, Han Shuo knew that the gods of death and the gods of destruction shared a close relationship. It was only natural that Li Wei and Bolton would come together. However, Donna was clearly a cultivator in the elemental energy of darkness. For her to come as the leader this time around, Han Shuo was rather surprised. He thought to himself, could it be that the overgod of darkness is also in cahoots with those two evil gods? While Han Shuo was still in shock, Li Wei suddenly let out a soft cry and went to the glass container containing the sea monster. She looked at the sea monster that looked like a little octopus and giggled. "Ha, what an ugly little fish. Interesting." Li Wei was about to break the boundary laid down by Han Shuo and take out the little octopus to play with without any scruples. "Don't touch it, it's not a pet." Han Shuo knitted his brows and lightly shouted. Although Han Shuo did not care about the sea monster's life or death, it was his territory and therefore his property. That Li Wei had been too presumptuous to touch his property without his consent. This made Han Shuo rather displeased. "It's just an ugly little fish. What's so precious about it? Let me play with it." Li Wei acted as though she did not hear what Han Shuo said. She was already preparing to break the boundary and take out the sea monster to play with. A figure flashed past and appeared beside Li Wei in the blink of an eye. Before Li Wei could react, the glass container was already in Han Shuo's hand. Han Shuo waved his hand and a crack appeared on the boundary of the cemetery of death. The glass container was tossed out and shattered. The sea monster miserably fled into the sea. Damn it! What kind of people are they? How could they be so terrifying? The sea monster trembled in fear. It could sense an extremely terrifying pressure from Li Wei and the others. It was truly frightened. Its tentacles wriggled rapidly as it rolled back into the sea and fled into the distance. Scram as far as you can. If you don't want to die, leave this sea forever," Han Shuo transmitted to the sea monster. Han Shuo had promised to spare the sea monster's life. He did not want to break his promise because of Li Wei, especially when Li Wei had disregarded his master's feelings. You stole something from me?" Li Wei could not react for a moment. She looked at Han Shuo with a puzzled expression and mumbled, "That thing was mine to begin with. My letting it go has nothing to do with you," Han Shuo replied indifferently. Before Li Wei could say anything, that emaciated old man had already fixed his gloomy eyes on Han Shuo with a displeased expression. Donna, on the other hand, was rather astonished as she sized up Han Shuo. Han Shuo's speed was so fast that she could not react for a moment. What shocked Donna the most was that she did not sense Han Shuo using the energy of death or destruction. All of a sudden, Donna became rather curious about Han Shuo. When she saw the gloomy expression on Colbert's face, she smilingly tried to smooth things over and said, "It's just a small fish. What's the big deal about letting it go? Li Wei, we are your guests. You should know your limits and not be too rude." What's so great about a petty fella? Li Wei was originally in a bad mood, but after hearing Donna's words, she rolled her quick-witted eyes and let out a snort as though nothing had happened. Colbert lowered his head again after hearing Li Wei's words. He once again put on a lifeless look. "I didn't expect a person from a low-level material plane to be so interesting." Hee. Bolton, who had been talking to Li Wei previously, mumbled to himself with a low chuckle, "If you don't mind, we can set off for the underground world." Han Shuo wore a composed expression as though he did not hear or see the disdain in their eyes. That would be for the best, Donna readily agreed. Let me lead the way. Han Shuo was rather displeased. He did not use the transportation matrix at the center of the Cemetery of Death to first head to Brett El City and then directly travel to Valen City and the Dark Forest. Instead, he directly passed through the Cemetery of Death and made the long journey from the Boundless Sea. Naturally, Donna and the others did not know that Han Shuo had such a fast and efficient route. Therefore, they did not say much and followed him towards the Dark Forest. Oh, right. How did you know that a mid-god has come to the Shrine of Ice? Donna seemed to be a bit interested in Han Shuo as they flew through the clouds towards the Dark Forest. She looked at Han Shuo for a while and felt that he was a bit odd. She thought for a bit and asked, I've seen him. Han Shuo was rather polite to Donna. He turned his head and replied with a smile. Shameless boasting. If he was a mid-god, would you still be alive after seeing him? Especially when he knows that you have control over that interplanar transportation matrix. Li Wei ridiculed disdainfully. She seemed to be retaliating against Han Shuo for snatching the sea monster from her hands. Although Li Wei was caught off guard, she was still rather indignant that Han Shuo could snatch the sea monster from her hands. However, Li Wei was not as reckless as she appeared to be, and she had to give face to Donna. Therefore, she did not flare up on the spot and decided to settle the score slowly. However, Han Shuo actually dared to say that he had seen that mid-god right in front of them. This was too much of a boast. Believe it or not, it's up to you. Han Shuo smiled and shook his head. He did not want to waste any more time with this young lady who was full of evil tricks. Donna was also very surprised, but she did not question Han Shuo's statement. Instead, she beat around the bush and asked, Where did you see him? What happened? After I killed the guardian of this interplanar plane and destroyed the interplanar transportation matrix, I was blocked by him when I was about to leave the boundary. After escaping from that boundary, I nearly died from serious injuries. Unfortunately, I was still one step too late. If I had gone there a few days earlier, perhaps they wouldn't have been able to make it here. Han Shuo said regretfully, What? You have killed the guardian of this interplanar plane and destroyed the interplanar transportation matrix that he controlled? At this moment, even the leader of the party, Donna, couldn't help but cry out in surprise. She sized up Han Shuo rather strangely. To think that you could escape from the boundary of a mid-god. Friend, you are too good at boasting. I admire you. Bolton laughed heartily and said eccentrically. Han Shuo forced a smile and shook his head. He did not explain anything. Brian, you said that you really destroyed the interplanar transportation matrix? Donna's expression was solemn. She asked seriously, Are you sure? Of course. Han Shuo said coolly, If you don't believe me, you can let one of them go over and have a look. No matter how you destroyed the interplanar transportation matrix, if it is true, we will have the upper hand in this battle. Yes, I will remember this credit. Don't worry, I won't mistreat you. Donna was overjoyed to see Han Shuo's affirmation. She did not expect to hear such good news so soon after arriving on this continent. The destruction of the interplanar transportation matrix meant that if there were any casualties on their side, they could return as soon as possible. Moreover, they could use the interplanar transportation matrix to mobilize experts to help. This was a great advantage. On the other hand, not only could they not continuously replenish their manpower, they might even have to go through a lot of trouble on their way back. Han Shuo shrugged and put on a carefree smile. He did not claim any credit or flatter. He appeared very relaxed. Donna nodded inwardly. Her opinion of Han Shuo improved a little. She felt that although Han Shuo's strength was lacking, his willpower and bearing were truly extraordinary. With that in mind, she had a favorable impression of Han Shuo. She shot a glance at old man Colbert who was standing beside Li Wei and knitted her brows. Donna knew that although Li Wei's actions were preposterous, she was not one to fuss over minor matters. However, her house servant, Colbert, was not so magnanimous. Given Colbert's strength, if he wanted to make Han Shuo suffer a little, Donna felt that Han Shuo would not be able to escape. Therefore, she made some calculations. Chapter 650. Each of Han Shua's party possessed astonishing strength. It took them only half a day to fly from the boundless sea to the dark forest. Along the way, Bolton, Li Wei, and the others exchanged their opinions in whispers about how Han Shua had escaped from a mid-god. They all believed that Han Shua was bragging and couldn't help but look at Han Shua with disdain. Dana, on the other hand, seemed to be very interested in Han Shua. She was in high spirits as she discussed the situation on Profound Continent with Han Shua. Han Shua, at his current realm of demonic arts, would not deliberately lower himself to curry favor with Dana just because she possessed superior strength and distinguished status. He had been neither overbearing nor servile, and his demeanor was relaxed and natural. Dana nodded to herself when she saw that. Han Shua observed for a moment and discovered that because of his and Dana's cheerful conversation, that taciturn Bowen was looking at him with gazes that contained traces of hostility. By now, Han Shua had more or less figured out the relationship between the five. Of the two brothers, Bolton and Bowen, Bolton seemed to have a favorable impression of Li Wei. As for that taciturn Bowen, although he didn't say a word, his gaze when he looked at Dana was filled with respect. This surprised Han Shua a little. Han Shua keenly sensed the faint hostility in Bowen's eyes, but didn't take it to heart. After arriving at the dark forest, Han Shua suddenly sensed the presence of Dark Dragon Gilbert. With one thought, he discovered that Gilbert had stopped at the original location of the Cemetery of Death and had been pacing back and forth. "Wait a moment, I have some small matters to attend to," Han Shua apologetically informed Dana before he suddenly turned into a streak of dark light and flew towards Gilbert's location. Gilbert's heart was full of doubts. He wandered around the vicinity a few times, but he couldn't feel the existence of the barrier at all. In addition, this place was a mess and full of desolation. Gilbert thought that he had found the wrong place and started to search further away. Gilbert could more or less guess what had happened here. However, just like Fanny and the other two, Gilbert had a blind trust in Han Shua. He had never imagined that the enemy Han Shua was facing this time would be so powerful that Han Shua had no choice but to temporarily retreat and move the Cemetery of Death to another place. Just as Gilbert was mumbling to himself, he suddenly sensed Han Shua's arrival. He calmed down and hurriedly looked up at the sky. Han Shua landed beside Gilbert and asked with a smile, "What happened? Did you come out from the underground world?" "Great Master, why can't I feel the boundary around the Cemetery of Death? What's going on?" Gilbert shouted loudly when he saw Han Shua. "The Cemetery of Death is no longer here. I moved it away to prevent others from finding it." Han Shua quickly explained. Soon after, he said to Gilbert, "I don't have the time to tell you the specifics. You just came out from the underground world. Do you know the secret that your dark dragons are guarding? If you do, just tell me. I won't ask your grandfather." Seeing that Han Shua was a little impatient, Gilbert didn't even think before he told Han Shua the information his grandfather had told him. He then asked in puzzlement, "What's wrong? Why are you so anxious?" "I'll explain it to you later. Go to the Valley of Sunshine for a while, or go to Bread City. When I'm done with my business, I'll contact you," Han Shua instructed. "Did you run into some trouble?" "Master, I can help you." Gilbert wasn't startled, but rather delighted as he said excitedly, "This matter is too big. You can't help me. You won't be able to participate in a battle between divine realm experts for the time being." Han Shua told the truth. The excited Gilbert was startled by Han Shua's words and immediately calmed down. Seeing that Han Shua was in a hurry, Gilbert didn't ask any more questions. He said, "Be careful." Under Han Shua's watchful eyes, he left the place and flew towards the Valley of Sunshine. After Han Shua left, Bolton knitted his brows and asked Dana in a deep voice, "Big Sister Dana, do you believe what that kid said?" Li Wei and Bowen also put on attentive expressions when they saw that Bolton was asking Dana for confirmation. "His words are a little unbelievable, but I don't know why, but I'm willing to believe him," Dana answered smilingly after thinking for a moment. "Big Sister Dana, you can't be serious, right? That fellow was obviously bragging. How could you believe him? I can see that his strength isn't much, but he's bold enough to boast." I really don't understand how a minor god from a low-level material plane can be so impudent, Li Wei said indignantly. Bolton immediately agreed. The taciturn Bowen also nodded lightly. Donna smiled inwardly when she saw Li Wei's indignant look. She said in amusement, "Shouldn't he be humbling himself and fawning? That's how you think a god from a low-level material plane should behave. That's how it should be. Aren't the local experts all like that when we go to other low-level material planes?" Li Wei said matter-of-factly and didn't find anything wrong with it. Donna shook her head smilingly and said, "People like that all have ulterior motives towards you. They either need you to promote them or want to attach themselves to your family. Even if they are gods, they are destined to be mediocre in the future." "That fella is mediocre?" Bolton said disdainfully. "I don't know, but in my opinion, he's stronger than those people." Donna thought for a moment. She looked at the three youngsters and said, "This young man named Brian has many things that you need to learn from him. Moreover, he seems a little strange, as though he's hiding some secrets." The three youngsters had odd expressions on their faces after hearing Donna's words. It appeared that they didn't take Donna's words seriously, because Donna said that Han Shuo had many things that they needed to learn from him. This instead aroused their arrogance. They thought, what right does a powerless and insignificant character from a low-level material plane have for them to learn from him? Donna took in the expressions of the three youngsters. She sighed inwardly, but did not say anything. These youngsters came from powerful families. They had been pampered since childhood and nurtured with great care by their families. Despite their young age, they already possessed astonishing strength. Back in their original continent, they were protected by their family elders. Each and every one of them was proud and arrogant. It was understandable that they would look down on others after coming to this low-level material plane. Before coming here, their family elders had already informed her, so it wasn't appropriate for Donna to say anything. Han Shuo left quickly and returned just as quickly. He flew to the side of Donna and the others. Without wasting any time, he said, "Follow me." Their speed was extremely fast. The few figures were like lightning bolts in the void. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the entrance to the underground world. With Han Shuo leading the way, they proceeded smoothly to the second layer of the underground world. "Right, who is guarding the entrance to that place?" Donna suddenly asked. "The dark dragons on this continent. But we don't need to go there. I already know the entrance," Han Shuo replied. "Other than you, only the dark dragons know, right?" Donna asked after thinking for a moment. Nodding, Han Shuo said, "That should be the case." "Oh, just in case, you'd better tell the dark dragons to go as far away as possible. Otherwise, the enemy will find the entrance to that place based on the dark dragons," Donna said to Han Shuo after a moment of silence. "Elder sister Donna, I think the best way is to exterminate the dark dragons," Bolton disagreed and suddenly suggested. Han Shuo was immediately enraged by his words. He snorted lightly. "The dark dragons have already paid a great price to protect this secret. Is this how you treat those who work for you?" Donna also knitted her brows. She glared at Bolton with some displeasure and berated, "Brian is right. Not only can we not do that, we must also protect them. Otherwise, who would dare to work for us in the future?" Bolton could disregard Han Shuo, but he dared not neglect Donna. Hearing her words, he awkwardly smiled and said, "Elder sister Donna, don't be angry. I'm just saying." Donna nodded. After thinking for a moment, she suddenly said, "Brian, it's better if you notify the dark dragons, lest they find us and completely wipe out the dark dragons." Alarmed, Han Shuo suddenly had an ominous premonition. Thinking from another perspective, Han Shuo felt that if he were the party from the Shrine of Ice, if they couldn't find him, they would definitely find a way to find out the path leading to the depths of the underground world, and then silence them so that they couldn't enter. With this in mind, Han Shuo headed towards the Dark Dragons region with some urgency. Donna and the others needed Han Shuo to lead the way, so they naturally followed along. By the time Han Shuo arrived at the Dark Dragons region, all he saw were corpses strewn all over the ground. Gilgs, the patriarch of the Dark Dragons, had his enormous dragon eyes still wide open, dying with everlasting regret. It seems that we're a step too late. Donna's heart tightened as she said in a deep voice. With a stupefied expression, Han Shuo walked up to Gilgs, the patriarch of the Dark Dragons. Seeing him dying with everlasting regret, Han Shuo's heart surged with monstrous fury. He reached out to cover Gilg's eyes, and with a jolt of consciousness, through Gilg's soul that had yet to completely dissipate, Han Shuo obtained some of Gilg's last memories through the demonic art of soul assimilation. A drop of blood sprayed out from his middle finger. Using the last wisp of Gilg's soul as a primer, Han Shuo replayed the bloody scene that happened not too long ago in midair like a movie. When Donna saw Han Shuo's cold and murderous expression, she knew that he was extremely furious. She was about to say a few words of comfort to Han Shuo, but when she suddenly saw the scene reflected in midair, she immediately covered her mouth and cried out in surprise. She looked at Han Shuo in disbelief. Not only Donna, Li Wei, Bolton, and Bowen, including that lifeless Colbert, were all stupefied. That's Kaiser and Erickson. How did you do it? Li Wei shrieked after watching the scene in a daze. She had an incredulous look on her face. He raised his hand and formed a hand seal. That drop of blood essence condensed in midair and returned to Han Shuo's body. At this moment, the last wisp of Gilg's soul that had yet to dissipate completely dissipated between heaven and earth, leaving not a trace behind. Old Dark Dragon, I will avenge you, Han Shuo thought to himself. Through those scenes, Han Shuo came to know about the tragedy that happened here. He also saw the old Dark Dragon's final cries filled with endless hatred. Unfortunately, the old Dark Dragon's soul had been squeezed too much before his death. Han Shuo had arrived too late and had no way to reassemble the old Dark Dragon's soul. I believe that all of you have seen the situation, Han Shuo said in a deep voice while suppressing the indignation in his heart. Perhaps it was because Han Shuo's performance was simply too astonishing. Even the two arrogant youngsters, Bolton and Bowen, did not find fault with him. They wore extremely strange expressions, and their eyes were filled with puzzlement. Colbert, do we have such a method to reproduce images of souls in our advanced techniques of the energy of death? Li Wei stared blankly at Han Shuo and asked Colbert, who was standing behind her. Colbert looked at Han Shuo in astonishment. He closed his eyes and pondered for a moment before replying solemnly, reporting to Miss, we can obtain some consciousness from the souls of the deceased. However, it is generally not easy to master the technique unless one is a high god. Even a high god who has mastered the technique cannot reproduce the images so clearly. The gods from high-level material planes turned pale with fright upon hearing those words. Brian, forgive me for being blunt, but what you used just now didn't seem to be the elemental energy of death. Moreover, I have never heard of such a miraculous technique in all the material planes I have traveled. What exactly is going on? Donna was puzzled. She found Han Shuo to be shrouded in mysteries. Low-level material planes have low-level techniques. The energy I used does not belong to the 12 mainstream energies. It is very, very unorthodox. It is normal that you don't know about it, replied Han Shuo with a straight face. He wasn't in a good mood. Can you tell us about it? Li Wei was greatly interested. Her eyes shone brightly as she stared fixedly at Han Shuo. I'm sorry, Han Shuo coldly refused. He did not give any leeway. Leeway, everyone has their own cultivation method. Your question is too rude. Donna rebuked Li Wei. Then, she suddenly giggled and said, I'm getting more and more curious about you. After shooting a meaningful glance at the Bowen and Bolton brothers, Donna continued, I think you can believe Brian's words. There are always exceptions to everything. After witnessing Han Shuo's miraculous abilities, the Bowen and Bolton brothers were extremely astonished. However, they were still skeptical of Han Shuo's words. They softly snorted and did not reply. Let's go. I think those people are already making their move, said Han Shuo coldly. He was in a bad mood. Brian, this is very common. Just remember this, grudge. But when you see Erickson and Kaiser, you must not be impulsive. After a short pause, Donna let out a sigh and continued, Forgive me for being blunt, but even if you are somewhat miraculous, You are still far from being their match. Han Shuo knew that Donna was speaking the truth. He nodded with great difficulty and said in a deep voice, I know what I'm doing. After thinking for a moment, Han Shuo sincerely said to Donna, Thank you. He could sense that Donna's words were sincere. Chapter 651. Fortunately, Gilbert had left in advance. Otherwise, he too would have died. It was because of Gilbert's escape that Han Shuo was able to learn the path to the depths of the third floor of the underground world. With Han Shuo leading the way, Donna and the others silently followed behind him. Along the way, they all wore odd expressions and looked at Han Shuo with puzzled eyes. For a low god of a low god from a low-level material plane to be able to perform such a miraculous feat, this group of experts from a high-level material plane became rather curious about Han Shuo. Along the way, the crafty Li Wei kept beating around the bush, hoping to get some information from Han Shuo. She suddenly showed great interest in Han Shuo. However, due to the tragedy of the Dark Dragons, Han Shuo was in a terrible mood and did not pay any attention to her. No matter how many questions she asked, Han Shuo kept a straight face and remained silent. In the end, Li Wei also grew bored and did not continue to stare fixedly at Han Shuo. Instead, she whispered to Donna and cast puzzled glances at Han Shuo from time to time. It was apparent that the topic of conversation between the two women was related to Han Shuo. The two brothers, Bolton and Bowen, recovered from their previous puzzlement. Their gazes towards Han Shuo were still faintly hostile. Perhaps the two pampered young men were displeased that the two women showed too much interest in Han Shuo. Han Shuo slowly adjusted himself along the way. It took him a while to regain his composure from the annihilation of the Dark Dragons. After attaining the Nine Changes realm, Han Shuo's ability to control his mind had significantly improved. On top of that, Gilbert did not die as a result. Therefore, Han Shuo was able to recover so quickly. Following the directions provided by Gilbert, Han Shuo and the 5 experts from high-level material planes passed through many dangerous regions of the second floor of the underground world and headed towards a dark and damp region. In this layer of the underground world, other highly intelligent levels surpassing magical beasts lived besides the ancient colossal dragon clan. However, along the way, none of the levels surpassing magical beasts dared to approach, perhaps because they sensed the abnormality in the space. As he got closer and closer to the path, Han Shuo found that there were no signs of life around him. After entering a narrow canyon, the air was damp, and there were no stones overhead to illuminate the area. Han Shuo, who had been advancing quickly, suddenly slowed down. When the people behind him saw that Han Shuo had slowed down, they all adjusted to the same pace as Han Shuo. What's wrong? Donna walked forward and asked softly. It's not far from here. I believe that the group from the Shrine of Ice must have arrived a step ahead of us. Just in case, I think we should be careful so that we don't fall into someone else's trap. Han Shuo didn't even look behind him. He just carefully observed his surroundings and focused on moving forward. Donna immediately understood the meaning behind Han Shuo's words. She straightened her face and hastily instructed, Everyone, be careful. What's there to be afraid of? Erickson and the others have annihilated the entire race of dark dragons. Perhaps they think that we won't be able to find them. Bolton walked lazily. He didn't seem the least bit nervous. That's right, don't make a fuss. They must have entered as soon as possible. How would they have the time to ambush us in the dark? Li Wei agreed. Han Shuo had ignored her throughout the journey, and this had greatly infuriated her. The few of you, move to the back. Donna, as the leader, calmly instructed at this crucial moment. Li Wei, Bolton, and Bowen did not dare to retort after hearing Donna's words. They slowed down their pace and fell behind Donna, Han Shuo, and Colbert. Donna and Han Shuo walked shoulder to shoulder in front. Colbert and Li Wei followed closely behind. The two brothers, Bolton and Bowen, stayed vigilantly at the very back. Be careful. Those guys might not be hiding in the dark, but they might deploy some concealment seals and boundaries. Kaiser and Erickson are both mid-gods. The traps they set won't be easy to break. Donna, who was beside Han Shuo, said softly to Han Shuo with her slender eyebrows slightly knitted. The two walked shoulder to shoulder and were very close to each other. Han Shuo could even smell the faint orchid fragrance emanating from Donna's body. It was a very pleasant scent, like the fragrance of orchids. But at this moment, Han Shuo did not let his thoughts run wild. He focused his attention and silently sensed the changes in their surroundings together with Donna. Suddenly, Donna extended her hand and gently grabbed onto Han Shuo's right arm. She forcefully pulled back Han Shuo, who was about to take a step forward. Han Shuo staggered, and his footsteps became somewhat unsteady. He turned around and looked at Donna with a puzzled expression. "Don't move around. Those guys have indeed deployed some traps just in case. We have indeed gained some advantages by coming in earlier," Donna softly exclaimed. She signaled for Han Shuo to take a few steps back. She suddenly extended her hand and pushed out her palm. Boundless darkness suddenly shrouded the entire canyon. Han Shuo could not see his surroundings with his naked eyes. He could only rely on his senses to sense that the temperature in the area where he was about to step forward had abruptly dropped to the extreme. The boundary of water that Erickson had deployed had probably been triggered. The boundless darkness came and went quickly. The canyon returned to normal in the blink of an eye. "All right, I'll walk in front while you show me the way." Donna smiled sweetly at Han Shuo and walked in front of Han Shuo. "All right." Han Shuo knew that Donna was indeed more skilled than him in this aspect due to her superior strength. Therefore, he did not insist and immediately agreed. Han Shuo noticed that Donna was holding a crystal compass covered with magical symbols in her hand. Donna fiddled with the crystal compass as they walked. She seemed to be measuring something with it. Donna did not turn around, but she seemed to have noticed Han Shuo's interest in the crystal compass. She continued to walk forward while explaining to Han Shuo, "The crystal compass in my hand is a tool to measure elemental energy. It can detect abnormal elemental fluctuations within a certain range. Many seals and barriers require elemental energy, so there are bound to be some changes. With this crystal compass, I can discover hidden dangers in the surroundings." Not bad. It's a very useful tool," Han Shuo softly replied. What a discerning fella. You must have no idea how precious this crystal compass is," Li Wei said disdainfully. Han Shuo could not be bothered with her. He did not respond to her and merely followed behind Donna in silence. The crystal compass is indeed very precious because the materials used to smelt it are very rare. Not many people know how to smelt it, Donna said with a faint smile while paying attention to the front. The entrance to the third layer of the underground world was only a few thousand meters away from where Han Shuo was standing. However, Han Shuo and his party proceeded with extreme caution. Using the crystal compass in Donna's hand, they discovered 3 more traps laid by Kaiser and Erickson within such a short distance. After spending half an hour, the gods finally arrived at the entrance. The entrance was, in fact, a dilapidated cave covered by densely packed vines. If one did not know the specific location, it would be difficult to detect that there was a cave leading to the third layer of the underground world behind the densely packed vines. Upon arriving at the entrance, Han Shuo observed for a moment and discovered that the vines were broken. He understood that Erickson and Kaiser's party must have entered the cave ahead of them. "It's here. Check if there are any traps at the entrance," Han Shuo asked Donna for confirmation as he pointed to the back of the vines. "No, they didn't lay any traps at the entrance. I'm sure they don't want anyone to discover the entrance through the traps," Donna explained to Han Shuo as she fiddled with the crystal compass. Upon hearing Donna's words, Han Shuo immediately moved the densely packed vines away and revealed the seemingly bottomless cave. Han Shuo turned around to look at Donna and the others. He then took a step forward and gestured for them to follow him. "The last one to enter. Restore the vines to their original state," Donna instructed. With a sway of her graceful body, she had already entered the cave. Bolton and Bowen followed closely behind, followed by Li Wei. Colbert deliberately stayed at the back and cautiously restored the vines to their original state. The moment the densely packed vines blocked the cave entrance, the originally dim cave entrance suddenly became even darker. It was so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. Without the aid of any lighting tools, only Dana, who cultivated in the elemental energy of darkness, and Han Shuo, who cultivated in demonic arts, could clearly see their surroundings in this pitch-black darkness with their naked eyes. In front of Han Shuo, Dana, who was holding a crystal compass in her hand, suddenly looked at it in astonishment. Han Shuo and Dana were very close to each other. When he saw the needle on the crystal compass jump, he immediately stood still. As expected, Dana suddenly said, "There's a barrier of light that Kaiser has set up in front of us. Because the cave is too narrow, I'm afraid that the cave will collapse once it's broken and block our way down. I'll cover them with darkness. All of you be careful. Don't use any illumination. As long as there's a ray of light here, no matter what it is, it will trigger the barrier." Upon hearing those words, the few behind him who were about to take out their lighting tools immediately stopped what they were doing and cautiously moved forward in the pitch-black darkness. Han Shuo turned around and took a glance. He discovered that in this absolute darkness, apart from Dana, everyone else's vision was affected. All of them wore blank expressions and appeared extremely cautious. Don't worry too much. As long as there is no light, the boundary will not be triggered. Right? All of you just have to be careful not to get tripped by the rocks. Just keep moving forward. Dana consoled them when she saw that they were being overly cautious. Those in front, don't block the way," Li Wei deliberately said as she walked behind Han Shuo. Han Shuo sneered in his heart when he saw that Li Wei still dared to deliberately charge at him with her hands clawing at the air in a daze. He leaned to the side and with the sole of his foot, pushed a moderate-sized rock to Li Wei's feet. It would be strange if Li Wei didn't suffer a calamity when a sharp-eyed person like Han Shuo was up to mischief in the dark. Every few steps she took, she would trip over a protruding rock, causing her to stagger. Flustered and exasperated, Li Wei cursed under her breath. How unlucky! Where did all these rocks come from? Bolton and the others following behind Li Wei would often repeat Li Wei's mistakes. When those rocks tripped Li Wei, they too would suffer. They would stagger with every step they took, causing them to scold incessantly. Dana, who was walking at the front, felt puzzled when she heard the curses of those behind her. Although she did discover some rocks along the way, most of them were on the sides. Logically speaking, they shouldn't be getting tripped over so frequently. With this thought in mind, Dana turned around and took a glance behind her. She discovered that Han Shuo, who was behind her, was wearing a composed expression. There was not the slightest trace of confusion on his face. After observing for a moment, Dana noticed that the corners of Han Shuo's mouth were hooked into a mocking smile. She immediately understood what was going on. As a matter of fact, Han Shuo did not hide anything from her. Seeing that she had turned around to look at them in puzzlement, Han Shuo even grinned at Dana. It was the smile of a prankster who had succeeded in pulling off a prank. Dana stared blankly for a moment before quickly coming to her senses. She shook her head, feeling both annoyed and amused at the same time. She thought that Han Shuo really didn't want to lose out. He actually used this kind of method to exact his revenge on Li Wei and the others. Li Wei and the others would not be harmed in the slightest by setting up stumbling blocks for them. Dana also believed that it was not a bad thing to let Li Wei and the others suffer a little. Therefore, she tacitly approved of Han Shuo's plan. All of a sudden, Dana came to a realization. She cultivated in the elemental energy of darkness, and it was normal for her to be able to see in the dark. But how was this guy able to see his surroundings so clearly? With this in mind, Dana's curiosity about Han Shuo grew even stronger. Seeing that Dana had tacitly approved of his actions, Han Shuo became even more brazen. With a malicious smile on his face, he secretly set up one roadblock after another for Li Wei and the others, causing them to complain and beg for mercy along the way. Brian, why is this guy fine? Bolton suddenly cried out in surprise when he noticed the anomaly. I've been tripped no less than you guys. It's just that I don't feel any pain or itch when tripped. I don't think there's a need to make a fuss, Han Shuo said eccentrically as he turned around to look at the party with a smile on his face. Thud. Han Shuo also staggered. He subconsciously let out a cry of surprise. Soon after, he realized what he had just said and felt incredibly embarrassed. Hey, who's that? Did I hear wrongly? Li Wei had obviously heard Han Shua's cry of surprise. She immediately launched a complacent attack. With Han Shua's cry of surprise, the group of youngsters rejoiced in Han Shua's misfortune. None of them suspected that Han Shua was up to no good. Han Shua, who had just slapped himself in the face, was also rather puzzled. He clearly did not see any rocks in front of him. How did he end up tripping? With a thought, Han Shua raised his head and looked at Donna. He discovered that Donna was walking forward with her back facing him. But when she turned a corner, Han Shua saw the corners of her mouth curling into a complacent smile. Han Shua shook his head and laughed involuntarily. It turned out that even the dignified and proper Donna could play tricks on others. Han Shua did not know whether to laugh or cry. But of course, he could not say anything. Chapter 652. In the pitch-black darkness, Han Shua and the others walked for half an hour. Donna, who had been leading the way, suddenly said, "All right, we have passed through the area where the light barrier is. Everyone can take out their lighting tools." As soon as Donna finished speaking, the few youths who had been tortured by Han Shua took out their gems that could emit light. In the darkness, they could see the surroundings clearly. Han Shua and Donna led the way. After walking for a while, many forks suddenly appeared in front of them. Donna stopped and looked back at Han Shua with an inquiring gaze. This was the key to the secret guarded by the Black Dragon race. When Han Shua saw the forks appear, he immediately took a step forward and explained, "From here on out, there will be many intersecting paths. If we take one wrong step, we won't be able to reach the third layer of the underground world. Follow me closely and don't run around." Han Shua's words were very serious. Those people who had been fooling around over small matters were not careless when it came to the crucial moment. They all expressed their agreement. It was Han Shua's turn to lead the way. Starting from the first fork, they continued to choose. Many narrow or wide paths appeared in front of them. Following Gilbert's description, Han Shua silently moved forward. After changing directions a few dozen times in the complicated cave, Han Shua finally brought them to a stop in front of a huge, dark pit. In front of them was a bottomless pit that led straight to the depths of the underground. "All right, let's go down from here. This will take some time. Everyone, be careful and pray for your own luck," Han Shua said indifferently. He turned his head to look at Donna and took the lead to land in the huge pit. There shouldn't be any danger, but everyone should be careful. Donna smiled and comforted the youths. She followed behind Han Shua and landed. Once inside the deep pit, Han Shua was once again in pitch-black darkness. But he wasn't nervous at all. He just released his consciousness and silently sensed the changes in his surroundings. Suddenly, Han Shua recalled that when he entered the abyss back in the abyss realm, he had also experienced a similar situation. In the abyss, he had encountered many dangers on the way down, and it wasn't as peaceful as this place. Although the speed of their descent was extremely fast, Han Shua could still see the surrounding scenery. There were only some very sparse and ordinary stones. Nothing could attract his attention. After Donna and the others landed, they were not far above Han Shua's head. Through the prying of his consciousness, Han Shua could clearly sense the position of Donna and the others. The entire descent took half an hour. When Han Shua's feet touched the ground, his body slightly trembled before he could even look at the scenery. A cold and sinister aura filled every corner, giving Han Shua a very familiar and comfortable feeling. After carefully sensing for a moment, Han Shua suddenly discovered that there was a faint presence of mystical aura in the air. This surprised and puzzled him at the same time. Mystical aura was the purest form of energy left behind after the death of a soul. Generally speaking, this kind of energy would gradually dissipate between heaven and earth as time passed. Only in some special natural environments, or when demonic arts cultivators deployed mystical formations, could it gather. The reason why Han Shua was surprised was that mystical aura could be converted into demonic yuan, which was unimaginably beneficial to his cultivation. The mystical aura had the same effect on Han Shua as the 5 elemental yuan energy did on the 5 elite zombies. It was a wondrous energy that could increase the rate at which Han Shuo cultivated his demonic yuan by more than 10 times. As soon as he landed, Han Shuo sensed the mystical aura that filled his surroundings. The pleasant surprise it brought him was unimaginable. Without even thinking, Han Shuo immediately confirmed that there was definitely a naturally formed mystical ground at the bottom of this underground world that could gather mystical aura. The excitement in his heart was simply uncontainable. After reaching the 9 changes realm, the improvement of demonic yuan needed to be accumulated over a long period of time. Han Shuo didn't know how long it would take for him to reach the Omen realm from his current realm. Thanks to the memories left behind by Chu Kanglin, Han Shuo had a path to follow in improving his mental state. However, the process of accumulating demonic yuan required a long period of time. However, with such a mystical ground, as long as he cultivated here and gathered the mystical aura for his own use, he could shorten this long period of time by 10 times, or even more than 10 times. Wild with joy, Han Shuo almost couldn't help but cheer out loud. However, he abruptly sensed that someone was descending from above and forcibly suppressed his excitement. There is indeed something strange about this place. Why is there a strange energy? This energy doesn't seem to belong to any of the 8 elemental energies. Donna cried out in surprise as she immediately sensed the strange energy that filled the surroundings as she landed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several figures landed beside Han Shuo one after another. Each and every one of them was greatly astonished as they curiously sized up their surroundings. After his initial joy, Han Shuo shifted his attention to other places. He discovered that this layer wasn't much different from the one above. There were glowing rocks high above his head, making this layer appear less dusky. Looking into the distance, the scenery was the same as the one above. There wasn't much difference. When he focused his gaze, he discovered that Erickson, whom he had previously met at the interplanar transportation matrix guarded by the primordious dragon, was indeed not far ahead. Other than Erickson, the gods from the alien material planes that Han Shuo saw through the last strand of the old dark dragon soul were also present. They seemed to have encountered some trouble. Donna cried out in surprise. Around Erickson and the others were a dozen or so grayish shadows shuttling back and forth, seemingly attacking Erickson and the others. Erickson, Kaiser, and the others looked as though they were facing a formidable foe. They seemed to be contending against the dozen or so grayish shadows and appeared to be in a rather difficult situation. With one thought, Han Shuo discovered that the dozen or so grayish shadows felt very familiar to him. After carefully sensing them, Han Shuo was startled. Mystical demons, that's a dozen or so mystical demons. Han Shuo was extremely bewildered. His mind raced, and he immediately realized that those dozen or so mystical demons must be powerful souls that had died in the center of the mystical region and transformed into mystical demons under the influence of the region. Demons were divided into original demons, demons, mystical demons, and spirit demons. Mystical demons could not evolve, and were not the most powerful kind. However, those dozen or so mystical demons that were shuttling back and forth were merely faint shadows, yet they were able to inflict unspeakable suffering on the few gods. They were many times more powerful than the mystical demons that Han Shuo had refined back then. After some thought, Han Shuo came to a conclusion. The souls of those dozen or so mystical demons must have been extremely monstrous before they died. Otherwise, there was no way they could have transformed into such terrifying mystical demons. Perhaps, the souls of those mystical demons were the gods from the alien material planes that had once fought in this place. That was the only possibility. After coming to this conclusion, Han Shuo was even more astonished. His pair of eyes were glistening as he stared fixedly at the dozen or so flying phantoms. After carefully sensing them with his consciousness, he immediately confirmed his conjecture. What exactly are those grayish shadows? Why are Kaiser and his party having such a hard time resisting them? Li Wei cried out in surprise. Her face was filled with incredulity. Don't act rashly for the time being. Let's observe the situation first. Donna shouted, and hastily instructed, "It's too late. Get ready to defend." Han Shuo cried out with a bitter smile. "Wow, what do you mean?" Donna panicked and looked at Han Shuo in confusion. Those mystical demons were extremely sensitive. As long as the aura of a living being approached, they would be able to sense it from miles away. This was something that Han Shuo knew better than anyone. However, he did not explain it to Li Wei and the others. In fact, there was no need for Han Shuo to explain. As soon as his voice faded, a portion of the dozen or so mystical demons thousands of meters away suddenly split off. They were faintly discernible in the air and swiftly flew towards them. They arrived in the blink of an eye and pounced on Han Shuo and his party. In an instant, Donna and her party were thrown into a state of confusion. Mystical demons had an extremely unique way of living. They did not have a physical body, and many physical attacks were ineffective against them. Donna and the others were unaware of the characteristics of mystical demons. Each and every one of them had a hard time resisting. Some of the mystical demons disappeared in a flash and immediately entered their bodies to attack their flesh and soul. What the hell is this? Li Wei shrieked in panic and fear when a mystical demon entered her body. Even Donna, who had always been calm and composed, was panicking like never before. She tried to use various kinds of energy to resist the assault of the mystical demons. Among the party, Han Shuo was the calmest. No one understood the characteristics of mystical demons better than he did. He was well aware of their strengths and weaknesses. If Han Shuo were to utilize some demonic arts, he could even deploy a formation to refine these mystical demons and have the spirit demons he refined devour the energy of the mystical demons. However, he could not do so at this moment. But compared to the others, Han Shuo was much more relaxed. Unlike spirit demons, mystical demons were not able to evolve. They were afraid of high temperatures and could be fatally wounded by some special soul attacks. Although Han Shuo's strength wasn't on par with Donna and the others, by relying on his understanding of the characteristics of mystical demons, he was able to raise the temperature of his body by secretly utilizing the mystical glacial spellfire. At the same time, he used his consciousness to form a unique attack method, using soul undulations to strike the mystical demon. Han Shuo did not describe the advantages and disadvantages of mystical demons to his allies in detail because he did not know if these people would become his enemies in the future. Moreover, the spirit demons he refined also possessed such characteristics. Therefore, he did not reveal the slightest bit about the characteristics of mystical demons. Han Shuo was indifferent to Li Wei's shrieks of terror, and her hands were tied against the mystical demons. Instead, he was secretly delighted. In truth, if Li Wei was proficient in necromancy magic, it would not be difficult for her to protect herself by attacking the mystical demons with soul attacks. Unfortunately, she knew nothing about mystical demons that had mutated from the mystical land. Therefore, her attacks were futile and she could only bitterly circulate her divine energy to resist the assault of the mystical demons. Han Shuo pretended to scream as he stealthily flew the spirit demon in the direction where the mystical aura was the densest. As the spirit demon did not have sufficient energy, it was not powerful despite its high level. However, its life form was somewhat similar to that of mystical demons. Those mystical demons could sense that Han Shuo had released a spirit demon that was even more concealed. However, they treated the spirit demon as one of their kind and paid no attention to the spirit demon that flew away. While pretending to make a fuss, Han Shuo maneuvered the spirit demon to fly towards the destination he sensed in his mind. Moments later, Han Shuo's eyes abruptly blossomed with an incredulous light. Due to the overwhelming shock, his body swayed unnaturally, and the mystical demon nearly seized the opportunity to invade his soul. Through the spirit demon, he discovered to his astonishment that the so-called mystical land was not naturally formed at all. Instead, it was a gigantic ninth realm mystical harvester. Chapter 653. The ninth realm mystical in harvester was a wondrous formation used to gather mystical in aura. Even in Han Shua's memories, there were only records of the formation, but not the detailed method of deployment. This ninth realm mystical in harvester, in particular, was obviously deployed by forcibly distorting the natural landscape. Han Shua was flabbergasted. Is there a second demonic arts cultivator on this profound continent? Han Shua was inexplicably shocked. He immediately thought of Chu Kanglin and wondered if Chu Kanglin had also survived the soul transmigration and arrived on this continent just like him. After carefully thinking about it, Han Shua immediately rejected this conjecture. Judging from the scale and profoundness of this enormous ninth realm mystical harvester, it was not something that an expert at the Nine Changes realm could deploy. As far as Han Shua knew, Chu Kanglin was merely at the Nine Changes realm before his death. Deep in his memories, he could not find the method to deploy the ninth realm mystical harvester either. Regarding the ninth realm mystical harvester, Chu Kanglin's memories only briefly describe the situation. In addition, it was explained that this kind of abstruse formation that could forcibly alter the laws of heaven and earth could only be deployed by a demonic arts cultivator who had ascended to a higher realm. What the hell is going on? Han Shua's heart was filled with disbelief and astonishment. His consciousness constantly warped and shifted, repelling a mystical demon that was closely following him like a shadow. His thoughts raced in silence. That spirit demon paced back and forth around the enormous ninth realm mystical harvester, but did not dare to venture too deep. Not only could the ninth realm mystical harvester forcibly alter the laws of heaven and earth, but it also possessed all kinds of miraculous effects. Han Shua knew a little about this from Chu Kanglin's memories. It wasn't easy for him to refine that spirit demon. If it were to be destroyed by the ninth realm mystical harvester with the slightest carelessness, Han Shua would be on the verge of tears. While the spirit demon paced back and forth around the ninth realm mystical harvester, silently observing the changes in the legendary Great Formation, Han Shua was still cautiously fending off the mystical demon that was besieging him. Li Wei suddenly cried out in alarm. Her voice was filled with incomparable fear. Han Shua was startled. When he looked at Li Wei with rapt attention, he discovered that she was extremely terrified and her eyes were filled with helplessness and pleading. Han Shua released a wisp of his consciousness. After a brief observation, he discovered that the mystical demon besieging her had penetrated her physical defenses and was eroding her soul. Idiot! Han Shua cursed in a low voice. As Kaiser and Erickson were mid-gods, they had a much easier time defending against the mystical demons. In particular, a portion of the dozen or so mystical demons that were attacking them had moved to Han Shua's side. This made things even easier for Kaiser and Erickson. Han Shua had destroyed the Shrine of Ice, fought with Erickson's soul, and injured Erickson's soul. Erickson couldn't let go of this hatred no matter what. As soon as he saw Han Shua, he charged at Han Shua. During the past few days, Kaiser had learned of Han Shua's actions against the Church of Light. When he learned that Han Shua had killed the Pope and 2 demigods of the Church of Light on this continent, he had made up his mind to completely destroy Han Shua. Therefore, when Erickson charged at Han Shua, Kaiser, on one hand, wanted revenge, and on the other hand, was worried that something might happen to Erickson. Youngster, I don't know how you managed to escape from me last time. Let's see if you can still be that lucky today, Erickson said in a bone-piercingly cold voice as he charged at Han Shua. The few youngsters who were bitterly defending against the mystical demons were shocked when they heard those words. It was only when Erickson personally confirmed it that they realized that what Han Shua had said back then was true. Originally, they all thought that Han Shua was bragging. After all, a low god escaping from a mid-god's boundary was simply too outrageous. It was only natural that they did not believe it. But now that Erickson had personally confirmed it, they had no choice but to believe it. This made them even more astonished. Han Shua couldn't help but smile wryly when he saw Erickson charging at him. Erickson was a mid-god. Han Shua knew that he had no chance of winning if he were to fight Erickson. Therefore, he immediately began to think of a way to deal with the situation. Erickson, do you think you can touch him with me here? Suddenly, Donna let out a gentle chuckle from within the absolute darkness. An expanse of darkness shrouded the entire area. Dense element of darkness filled every corner. The domain of divinity of darkness manifested as absolute darkness. In this absolute darkness, apart from the caster, no one could see with the naked eye. The sensitivity of the soul would be greatly reduced. Affected by the darkness, the caster would lose the initiative and be in a very passive position. Both Erickson and Kaiser were shocked when they heard Donna's voice. "It's you." Erickson's face sank. He suddenly said, "Don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you have a powerful divine weapon. You won't be able to get away with it even if Kaiser and I join hands." "Oh." Donna giggled and calmly said, "Well then, come in and give it a try." After hearing Donna's words, Erickson didn't dare to go any deeper and forcibly stopped midway. Kaiser came to Erickson's side and looked at the party shrouded in absolute darkness with a complicated expression. After pondering for a moment, he advised Erickson, "Let's get down to business. It won't be too late to fight her when the time comes." After hearing Kaiser's words, Erickson became silent for a moment. He snorted but did not rashly charge in. Instead, he turned around and left without a moment's hesitation. Kaiser and Erickson returned to the other four and continued to resist the mystical demon's attacks. They had no intention of fighting at this moment. After Kaiser and Erickson disappeared, Donna withdrew her domain of absolute darkness. The space around Han Shuo and the others returned to normal. "Thank you," Han Shuo sincerely said to Donna. "You're welcome. We're all on the same side." Donna smiled with a relaxed expression. Just Donna alone was enough to make Erickson and Kaiser, two mid-gods, feel apprehensive and not act rashly. Judging from this, Han Shuo was certain that Donna's overall strength was superior to either Kaiser or Erickson's. This judgment startled Han Shuo. When he looked at Donna again, there were a few more traces of respect in his eyes. The reason why they didn't act immediately is because they have exhausted too much of their divine energy to deal with those bizarre creatures. We have just arrived and none of us have sustained any injuries. That's why they are being so cautious and not acting rashly. Donna softly explained as she looked at Kaiser and the others. Han Shuo did not say much and nodded to indicate that he understood. Donna looked at Kaiser and the others and pondered. After a while, she suddenly thought of something and looked at Han Shuo in astonishment. "Why do you look so relaxed?" Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment and immediately reacted. However, the mystical demon's attacks never ceased. On this floor, although the low gods on Donna's side weren't in as much of a thrilling situation, they were just as busy and had no time to be distracted. Kaiser's side was in a similar situation. Other than Kaiser and Erickson, the other low gods were suffering unspeakably. They appeared to be badly battered and battered. Apart from Donna, Kaiser, and Erickson, Han Shuo was the only one who looked as usual. It was as though he wasn't concerned about the strange creatures that had been besieging him and could even converse with her calmly. Han Shuo, on the other hand, was just a very weak low god. It was no wonder that Donna was greatly alarmed. What a meticulous woman, Han Shuo thought to himself with a bitter smile. He hastily explained, "The strange creatures that attacked me were weaker than all of you." Donna was stunned. She creased her brows and sensed the mystical demon that was fighting against Han Shuo. Suddenly, she was startled. When the mystical demons came over, Donna carefully sensed with her soul and discovered that the mystical demons that were attacking them had similar energies. In fact, the mystical demon that was besieging Han Shuo seemed to be slightly stronger. Donna was certain that her intuition wasn't wrong. However, after listening to Han Shuo's words, Donna once again sensed and suddenly discovered that among the mystical demons that were besieging them, Han Shuo's energy had indeed become the weakest. This secret discovery made Donna even more puzzled. With so many mystical demons attacking them and even she bitterly defending herself, she wasn't able to disperse the mysterious energy of the strange creatures. So why was it that the mystical demon that was besieging Han Shuo had greatly weakened? With this thought in mind, Donna once again carefully observed Han Shuo. She discovered that Han Shuo was once again shrieking in panic. The expression on his face was also vivid and lifelike. However, when she recalled Han Shua's performance just now and compared it to now, Donna couldn't believe that Han Shua would be afraid of those strange creatures. Looking at Han Shua's strenuous act, Donna found it both infuriating and funny. After thinking for a moment, she was shocked. Could it be that he injured those strange creatures? That's impossible. It must be my misconception. This guy is just a low god. Even I can't find a way to disperse the energy of those strange creatures. How could he do it? But would I have such a misconception? No, I've never made such a mistake in all these years. Monstrous waves surged in Donna's heart. She looked at Han Shua with eyes filled with doubt. She sensed that Han Shua was hiding an enormous secret, but she didn't know what that secret was. There was only one thing she was certain of: Han Shua didn't want to tell anyone about his secret. Donna forcefully shook her head as though she was trying to throw away the complicated thoughts in her mind. What's going on? They're gone. Why did they suddenly run away? Li Wei cried out. The strange creatures that had been chasing after them, as if they would not stop until they were dead, flew away in an instant. They turned into gray shadows and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Time's up. The mystical demons have returned to the 9th realm mysticaline harvester, Han Shua thought. Kaiser and his party heaved a sigh of relief. One of the beautiful women grumbled, "Damn it, they're finally gone again." Han Shua's ears twitched and he heard their conversation. Based on the beautiful woman's judgment, Han Shua knew that they had encountered this situation before. After pondering for a moment, Han Shua gradually guessed the situation of the mystical demons based on his understanding of the 9th realm mysticaline harvester. They have consumed much more divine energy than we have. This is a golden opportunity. If they don't move, we'll take the initiative and attack. Donna softly shouted and suddenly commanded, "Attack! I will hold Kaiser and Erickson back. The rest of you, find your targets and kill." Chapter 654. Han Shua did not expect that Donna would be so decisive to issue such an order the instant the mystical demons left. But after thinking about it carefully, Han Shua realized that this was indeed a good opportunity. The premise was that Donna alone could hold off both Erickson and Kaiser. A mid-god and a low-god were simply not on the same level. So long as either Erickson or Kaiser was freed up, they would be in serious trouble. Apart from Donna and the other two mid-gods, the remaining low-gods on both sides were roughly equal in strength. Once a battle broke out, Donna's side would obviously have the upper hand because they had been harassed by the mystical demons for a short period of time and had consumed less divine energy. It was a very wise choice for Donna to attack at this moment. As soon as she finished those words, she took the lead. Like a curtain, darkness gradually shrouded the battlefield. Kaiser and Erickson exchanged glances. Although they were somewhat reluctant, they still resolutely met the enemy head-on. Erickson took a few steps back and allowed Kaiser to meet the enemy head-on. Kaiser did not make any movements, but his entire body suddenly turned into a source of glaring light. Intense element of light burst out from his body as he awaited Donna's arrival. "Let's go," Bolton shouted in a deep voice. A dark and glossy warhammer appeared in his hand. The hammer was smelted from an unknown material and appeared to be very heavy. Li Wei and the others did not remain idle either. Every one of them had a weapon in their hand. Li Wei was holding an exquisite curved bow. The taciturn Bowen was empty-handed, but he was wearing a suit of armor. Colbert was holding a white bone spear in his right hand. The bone spear was engraved with strange symbols. Bolton, Bowen, and the others charged in front of Han Shua. They appeared very excited, as though they were used to this kind of lineup. Donna indicated that she would deal with both Erickson and Kaiser on her own. With that, Erickson's side was left with only 4 low gods. On Donna's side, excluding Han Shua, there were Bolton, Bowen, Li Wei, and Colbert. After Donna gave the order, each of them matched up against one another. Han Shua did not recklessly charge into the fray. Even though Li Wei possessed late-stage low-god strength, the others were also of the same realm. Under such circumstances, if Han Shua were to get involved, he would only be asking for trouble. Therefore, Porton and Bowen flew towards each other one by one, while Han Shuo stood still and observed their battle coldly. Not only did Donna not object to Han Shuo's performance, but Bolton and Bowen also did not say anything. In their hearts, Han Shuo was just a rookie who had just attained the divine level. If he were to participate in this, he would only end up dead. Therefore, it was reasonable for him to be sensible and stay where he was. Just like that, Han Shuo leisurely stayed where he was. While observing the battle between the gods, he continued to observe the situation of the ninth realm mystical harvester using spirit demons. While the gods of the foreign material planes were engaged in battle, the dozen mystical demons flew into the ninth realm mystical harvester and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. In an instant, the entire area turned gloomy. Sand and pebbles were sent flying. The domains of divinity collided with one another, producing incessant rumbling and explosions. These people had come from foreign material planes for the secret of this place. To Han Shuo, be they friend or foe, they were all outsiders. He wished that they could all die here. The only person that Han Shuo somewhat approved of was Donna. At the very least, Donna was very friendly towards him. The majority of Han Shuo's attention was also focused on Donna. Within her domain of divinity, the area that Kaiser's powerful light could cover was limited. Within that limited area, Kaiser and Erickson stood close to each other and solemnly dealt with Donna's attacks. It was as though Donna was wielding an extraordinary divine weapon. By borrowing the miraculous energy of that divine weapon, Donna's energy of darkness had been greatly enhanced. As mid-gods, Han Shuo speculated that Donna's realm might be slightly higher than Kaiser and Erickson's. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to deal with the two of them with such ease. Han Shuo calmly observed the people standing together and continued to observe the changes of the ninth realm mystical harvester through his spirit demons while thinking of ways to deal with Kaiser and his party. Even if he cast aside his hatred towards the race of dark dragons, Han Shuo couldn't let Kaiser and his party off. On this continent, Han Shuo had offended the Church of Light and the Shrine of Ice. Not to mention that he had once injured Erickson's soul. Han Shuo understood that it was either one of them or the other. Of course, Han Shuo didn't want to die. Therefore, he must kill Kaiser and Erickson first. With this in mind, Han Shuo hastily racked his brain for ways to kill the two. However, he discovered that his own strength was far from enough to kill Kaiser and Erickson. All of a sudden, Han Shuo's heart jolted. Through the spirit demon that was hovering around the ninth realm mystical harvester, Han Shuo discovered that there were a few more concealed evil magic formations with extraordinary destructive power in the vicinity of the ninth realm mystical harvester. Those demonic formations seemed to have been concealed by some kind of energy. It was only after the dozen or so mystical demons returned to the ninth realm mystical harvester that they gradually revealed themselves. Han Shuo was aware of the functions of two of the demonic formations. He also knew how to avoid being attacked by them. One was the Pentacloud Miasma, and the other was the Black Gale of Doom. Both were demonic formations with tremendous destructive power. Han Shuo was confident that he could protect himself after entering the two demonic formations. The two demonic formations possessed extraordinary destructive power. If they were deployed by the person who deployed the ninth realm mystical harvester, they would surely possess tremendous destructive power. While pondering, Han Shuo searched for a way to bring Erickson and the others into the two demonic formations. Before Han Shuo could think of a way, his consciousness sensed an unsuitable sense of danger. Han Shuo calmed his mind and immediately stopped thinking about it. He began to concentrate on sensing the source of that sense of danger. Startled, Han Shuo raised his head and looked behind him. He suddenly discovered that another group of people had entered from the direction they came from. This discovery greatly alarmed Han Shuo. He did not expect that there would be someone else who knew about this place other than himself, Kaiser, and Erickson. The race of dark dragons had perished. There shouldn't be anyone else who knew about this place. Donna, someone else is coming down. Han Shuo suddenly shouted. In the absolute darkness, Donna, who had forced Erickson and Kaiser into a corner, was also startled when she heard Han Shuo's shout. Donna trusted Han Shua. She immediately retreated and called out to Li Wei and the others as she retreated. The party that had been exchanging blows quickly separated again. Perhaps due to the short duration of the battle, there were no casualties on either side. Only Bolton and one person from the other side suffered some minor injuries. What happened? Bolton asked while suppressing the anger in his heart after he was injured. He followed Donna and returned to Han Shua's side with a murderous aura. Someone else is coming. Han Shua shot a cold glance at him and said in a deep voice, "Why can't I sense anything?" Bolton glared at Han Shua and said furiously, "I was injured and that was the critical moment of my counterattack. Don't make irresponsible remarks." "Shut up, Bolton." Donna reprimanded Bolton with a grave expression. She knitted her brows and muttered to herself for a moment. She seemed to be calmly sensing the situation in the distance. Suddenly, Donna's eyes lit up and she exclaimed in astonishment, "He's right. Someone else is coming." Before knowing if the newcomers were friends or foes, Donna calmly stopped Bolton and the others from acting rashly and silently looked back at the path they had come from. Kaiser, Erickson, and the others also sensed the abnormality at this moment. They cautiously looked in that direction, their hearts restless. The interplanar transportation matrix controlled by the Primordius Dragon had been destroyed by Han Shua. Logically speaking, it was impossible for their side to come over. Based on this understanding, they believed that the newcomers were most likely Donna's group. After all, the interplanar transportation matrix controlled by Han Shua was still there. Donna was equally perturbed. The difference in strength between the two sides was not too great, and her side could even faintly hold the upper hand. If the newcomers were enemies, the balance might be broken, and her side would fall into a disadvantageous position. As the leader of this side, Donna knew that her side shouldn't have sent people over without receiving her message. Therefore, she was astonished and even began to doubt whether Han Shua was telling the truth when he said that he had destroyed the interplanar transportation matrix. "Kid, you said that you destroyed their interplanar transportation matrix. You're not lying, are you?" Unlike Donna, Bolton didn't have a favorable impression of Han Shua. Therefore, he immediately voiced his doubts. Han Shua shot a cold glance at Bolton and said nothing with a gloomy face. "Humph. If we lose this battle because of your lies, you'll pay for it later," Bolton said angrily when he saw Han Shua scowl. Donna did not say a word. She focused all her attention on observing the people approaching from behind. Two silhouettes gradually became clearer. One of them was an old man that Han Shua was very familiar with. He was Demigod Kelly, who fought alongside Han Shua back in Kasi Empire. He was from the Druidic Order. Standing beside Kelly was a middle-aged man with a gentle temperament and a genial smile. The middle-aged man wore a relaxed expression and was even whispering something to Kelly with a smile. Kelly, who looked like he could be the middle-aged man's father, appeared to be extremely deferential and respectful towards the middle-aged man. Donna, who had been calm and collected ever since she arrived on Profound Continent, suddenly bunched her brows tightly. She looked at the middle-aged man as though she was facing a formidable foe. When Kaiser and Erickson saw the appearance of the middle-aged man, they exchanged glances and forced a smile. "Hey, Kaiser and Erickson, did you not want me to come here? You even destroyed the transportation matrix. I had to go through untold hardships, passing through multiple material planes, and finally embarking on an arduous interplanar journey to get here," the middle-aged man said warmly as he looked at Kaiser and Erickson with a faint smile on his face. Kaiser and Erickson explained from a distance with bitter smiles on their faces, "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."